Chapter 921, Autumn Moon's Harmonious Echo II. Gyu Hongyao surged forward on flames. Though the white-robed youth before her was lacking in cultivation, his escape light was surprisingly fast. Perhaps he had taken some spiritual pill. It would explain why she couldn't catch up to him for the moment. Run. She felt exhilarated as she rode fire all the way. Li Zijian traveled ahead on frost, deep in thought. She's certainly no weakling. At the very least, this speed is beyond the norm. Li Zijian had rushed ahead and, as expected, ran into the two of them, confirming his guess. Now, after flying dozens of kilometers, he noticed Gyu Hongyao was still chasing relentlessly, drawing ever closer. He thought to himself, she seems to have been thrown off completely. It's not likely that she will be hiding any tricks. He slowly reached for Han Lin at his waist. The frost under his feet began to dissipate, and his speed slowed as he let the scorching, merging fire behind creep closer until its heat stung his back. Suddenly, Li Zijian spun around and drew his sword. Clang, a streak of white light flared above the sea. Han Lin's blade was so fast that it blurred through the air. There was a flash of bright white frost emanating from his strike, like a gust of pine-laced winter wind and falling snow rushing straight forward. Gyu Hongyao was caught off guard, seeing only a handful of snow flying toward her. She couldn't even tell whether it was sword light or dharma light. The piercing chill swept over her, and she blankly thought, a talisman. The command token in Gyu Hongyao's hand was no ordinary item, and its instinct to protect its master acted faster than she could. The stored merging fire burst forth, drawing her mana into it and forming a gray wall of fire in front of her, but she was only a meter away from Li Zijian. Even Kai Jian and Li Qijing, both sword essence cultivators, maintained the distance of a meter in battle. Purple Mansion Realm cultivators would retreat 3 meters before Shangyuan, yet Gyu Hongyao stood only a meter from a sword cultivator who had formed sword essence. Han Lin could practically reach her hem. The hasty wall of merging fire was completely useless. Han Lin's true blade sliced clean through it, cleaving it in half. Her eyes were filled with dazzling white snow, then she felt a chill on her neck. PFFFD. Blood gushed from her neck as Gyu Hongyao's pupils dilated, and her elegant neck was severed in a single stroke. Crimson blood sprayed along the sword for a moment before curling back and pouring into the wound. Buzz. The sword had come too quickly. The treasure on Gyu Hongyao's body hadn't even reacted. Her head had already left her neck by the time the jade pearl protecting her body finally activated its mana to deflect the sword. The shock and panic in Gyu Hongyao's eyes had yet to fade when Li Zijian's sword technique reversed. 3 strands of snowy light slipped out of the blade, drifting and gliding toward her. The 3 nimble, cunning streaks of snow darted toward her Qihai, Shenyang, and Juk acupoints. Though Gyu Hongyao's head was still suspended midair, she managed to react, shoving her long command token forward to block. She bit down on her lip, causing blood to stain silver teeth and then transform into gray fire that was carried forward with her breath. This gray fire was several times denser than before. Its aura was overwhelming as it surged toward the 3 streaks of sword light, but the threefold moonlight was inherently agile and cunning. It deftly dodged the gray fire and clashed with her life-preserving protective light with a metallic ring. The sounds of shattering snow and ice rang out repeatedly, and the jade pearl at her neck flickered erratically. Thank goodness. In the end, it was Gyu Hongyao's lineage that saved her life. Sword Essence Grade Threefold Moonlight could already destroy most spells, yet the life-saving treasure gifted to Crimson Reef Island's direct descendants withstood it, and still had energy to spare. Gyu Hongyao finally had the chance to reattach her head. Frost and merging fire hissed into white steam where neck and body met. The gray fire spiraling from her token coiled around her neck, fixing her head in place. Damn it. Only now did Gyu Hongyao belatedly realize her fortune, as she realized that Li Zijian practiced cold essence. Had he used metal or earth techniques instead, she would never have had the chance to restore her head. Hatred rose in her eyes. She reached quickly for the storage pouch at her waist, but a question suddenly rose in her mind. He gave me so much time to react. What is he doing? Her spiritual sense was fully engaged in using gray fire to fend off the 3 sword essence-like streaks, so she could only stare blankly with her eyes. Snow blanketed the sea. Before her, the white-robed man held his sword at an angle. The slender, snow-like blade radiated blinding brilliance. Snowflakes drifted down from the sky, each striking her protective barrier with a crisp clang, like rain on tiles. The 3 streaks of sword light darted like fish in water, flickering in and out among the storm of snow and sword aura. But she no longer had the strength to deal with the 3 streaks. Li Zijian's sword had already fallen. Gyu Hongyao's trembling hand gripped a talisman, but her vision was pure white. She could see nothing, there was only an intense and drifting whiteness. Half the mana had already entered her talisman when a sword light erupted from her Shenyang mansion, interrupting the mana flow. The half-activated talisman remained in her palm, faintly glowing. She felt a chill pulse through her chest. The sounds around her shattered into fragments as the tip of Han Lin slid between her brows, freezing her so thoroughly that she trembled. Her consciousness started slowly fading away. Blood flowed from her mouth and nose, but showed no sign of transforming into merging fire. It slid down her fair cheek as Li Zijian stood exactly a meter away, white robes fluttering. As her vision dimmed, Guo Hongyao suddenly realized where she had gone wrong. I shouldn't have hastily reattached my head. I should have fled first instead, thought Guo Hongyao. Chapter 922, Seizing the Prize I. Guo Hongyao had only been gone for 15 minutes, yet Guo Hongkeng was already growing anxious where he stood. His once settled mood turned uneasy. He flew northward for a kilometer or two, but fearing schemes or ambushes, dared not go farther. Perhaps Li Zijian has someone backing him. Guo Hongyao might act fierce against Li Zijian alone, but if she runs into that thunder cultivator Li Qingheng, she's no match at all, muttered Guo Hongkeng. He figured Guo Hongyao's life shouldn't be in danger. Although Guo Shentong had vanished for years, and the east and west sides of Crimson Reef were now allies in name only, Guo Hongyao's branch was still one of direct descendants. She should still carry plenty of life-saving treasures. I'll wait a little longer. If there's no word from her after an hour, she's probably used some talisman to escape. I'm carrying something too important to just stand here. Guo Hongkeng waited quietly, one hand on his magic sword. He closed his eyes while his other hand lit up with red light, 2 fingers pressed on the Shenyang mansion point between his brows. Using a spell, he extended his spiritual sense to its limit, yet he still couldn't sense anything. He had no choice but to give up and open his eyes. In the hazy distance, he saw a reddish-gray glow. It was clearly the hue of merging fire. Alarmed, he quickly clutched the talisman Guo Hongjian had given him, thinking, she already used a talisman after just 15 minutes. Li Zijian is only at the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. His sword aura barely counts as strong, not overwhelming. Either he's hiding his strength or he has help. Guo Hongkeng immediately made a decision and began retreating silently. His original plan to wait an hour was instantly abandoned as he muttered, I'll give her 15 more minutes. Guo Hongkeng was one of the top talents among the collateral branches. He secretly cultivated many techniques and had a bright future. But even so, he didn't dare offend Guo Hongyao, afraid this woman might go mad. If not for that, I wouldn't care whether she lived or died. He waited anxiously for a few seconds until he finally spotted a streak of light flying toward him from the distance, swaying unsteadily. Its mana aura was so dim it was hard to discern, but it was faintly tinged with white mist. Guo Hongkeng's eyes narrowed as he looked closely. The figure collapsed headfirst onto the shore. Her protective mana completely dissipated, revealing a pale and delicate face. Who else could it be but Guo Hongyao? Her flame token lay dim and stuck in the ground beside her. She was covered in blood and her dharma robe was dulled, stained in a blend of gray-red and crimson. It was rather garish against the island backdrop. Serves her right. Guo Hongkeng felt a surge of satisfaction. He immediately connected her condition to the distant gray-red glow and chuckled inwardly. The fool must have suffered terribly. She used up all her hidden talismans just to stop the guy. If I hadn't been here when she fled, she wouldn't even have her life left. He drifted on the wind toward her, still curious. I wonder what that white light was. Maybe some top-grade escape treasure's light trail. Guo Hongkeng slowly descended. On the island shore, Guo Hongyao had already swallowed several pills, her complexion visibly recovering. Guo Hongkeng approached a few steps closer and saw a coldly gleaming sword lying under her robes, still stained with blood. Realizing she had slain Li Zijian, he sighed and offered his congratulations. Congratulations, my lady, on slaying your foe. The Guo Hongyao before him appeared gravely injured, struggling to breathe, and gasped, "Come here." Startled by her shout, Guo Hongkeng shivered and quickly stepped forward. He saw her clutching her waist, struggling to rise. Her delicate hand lifted the sword that gleamed like snow, and her face twisted in pain as she barked, "Take it already." Though inwardly scornful, Guo Hongkeng maintained a respectful expression and quickly reached out to grab the sword's sheath. But it sank heavily into his hand and he looked up, puzzled. It turned out Guo Hongyao hadn't let go of the hilt. Her graceful hand held the sword as if she had drawn it countless times before. Her pale fingers were defined and elegant, even beautiful. At that moment, Guo Hongkeng's gaze moved past her hand to land on Guo Hongyao's face. Her expression was icy as frost, and her eyes brimmed with killing intent. Guo Hongyao had always been beautiful, but the usual look of petulance and impulsive discontent was now gone. In its place was an untouchable solemnity, like standing amidst a snowstorm. The chilling and imperious stillness made her look less like Gu Hongyao and more like that snow-clad Taoist master Tianwen. Clang. Gu Hongkeng was less than a meter away from Li Zijun, who had transformed into Gu Hongyao. He was holding Han Lin's scabbard in his hand when all he saw was a flash of snowy white. A chilling light rose from his throat. The moment Li Zijun drew his sword, Han Lin slashed clean through Gu Hongkeng's throat, severing his head in one swift strike. Snowflakes scattered like a storm. Li Zijun didn't know what relationship the two had, but he knew Gu Hongyao was irrational. A show of agony covered everything better than polite behavior. Any inconsistencies in attitude would be excused under the pain she'd endured. As expected, Gu Hongkeng suspected nothing and followed Gu Hongyao to the grave. He was also decapitated by Li Zijun in one strike. But Gu Hongkeng was not Gu Hongyao. Shock barely flickered through his pupils before he acted, not to save himself, block the blow, nor retreat, but to activate the talisman in his hand. Boom! A blinding gray-red light burst out. The potent merging fire in his palm turned pure black. It was like a massive stone dropped into a lake as it splashed fire in all directions. The seawater around the island was instantly drawn away, and merging fire swirled wildly, creating a vast, hollow crater over the sea. The merging fire talisman exploded right next to the two of them, engulfing both in an instant. Li Zijun's body was flung backward, trailing a long streak of gray flame. Gu Hongkeng's head, already severed by Li Zijun, was blasted away by the merging fire. Body and head flew in different directions. His eyes glowed red as his head spun midair, still muttering faintly. However, his body halted midair amidst the firelight. It calmly formed seals with his fingers to control the wind and deflect merging fire. Its robes billowed as it turned to chase after the head. Gu Hongkeng's decision was unquestionably wise. The instant use of the talisman showed his composure and caution in crisis. Had he not kept it ready in hand, how would he have disrupted Li Zijun now? Though his head was already gone, only few could take action in that moment of overwhelming fear. Yet he had triggered the talisman without hesitation. Had he hesitated by even a second, he would have followed Gu Hongyao and become another soul slain under Li Zijun's sword. Li Zijun swallowed blood and skidded to a halt in midair. Frosty mana burst from his Kihai acupoints to resist the merging fire clinging to him, but the flames still danced across his body. His vision was shrouded in gray haze. He could barely see. My eyes, they're injured. The only way he could have taken such a powerful talisman blast at close range, and only suffer injuries to his eyes and face, was due to Gu Hongyao's Dharma robe. Though he hadn't refined it, it was of the merging fire and could resist flames to some degree, allowing his body to rise with the fire rather than be incinerated. His spiritual sense was still usable. Li Zijun spat out a mouthful of blood, letting the blood mist ignite and vanish into flame. Frost flared beneath his feet as he reversed his longsword and flicked out 3 streaks of sword light. Gu Hongkeng was the one who cast the spell and also cultivated merging fire, so by any measure, his injuries were lighter than Li Zijun's. He had already retrieved his head, but the sword essence coating his neck was like a heavy frost, making it nearly impossible to reattach. Sword essence. Li Zijun. Frightened, he fumbled for his pills, only to see 3 pale sword lights already drifting his way. Li Zijun had reverted to his original appearance, his eyes burned to ashen gray and red-gray merging fire still flickering over his body. Chapter 923, Seizing the Prize II. In that brief moment, Gu Hongkeng understood that he needed time to heal the wound on his neck, and Li Zijun needed time to expel the notoriously sinister and difficult merging fire from his body. One of them had to die within the next dozen or so exchanges. Gu Hongyao, how is that possible? It hasn't even been 15 minutes since she left, and she still died to him when she had to fly part of the way. At this point, he already regarded Li Zijun's swordsmanship as equivalent to that of a direct descendant from a sword sect. One hand released several talismans to defend, while the other summoned merging fire to form 2 beams of gray light as he cast a spell and shouted, "Strike." The 2 beams of gray light instantly shot across the sea at high speed. They didn't even bother to intercept the sword light, they simply slammed straight into Li Zijun, erupting into clusters of gray fire around him. Li Zijun showed no fear. A band of color flared from his sleeve as the Chongming Profound Insight screen, which he had held back earlier to avoid exposing his identity, lit up beside him. The mysterious golden light of the screen enveloped him and firmly blocked the gray fire. Crimson Reef Island did not belong to the Jiangnan Dao lineage. and none of the 7 of Changming Hall practiced the merging fire Dao. So the paintings on the screen didn't activate, but the Changming Profound Insight screen, as an ancient technique Dharma artifact, was more than enough to block this spell. On the other side, Li Zijian's sword light likewise didn't bother cutting through the flames. It simply headed straight for Guo Hongkang. The 3 agile, cunning sword streaks danced as they struck, shattering his protective shield. Thank goodness. Guo Hongkang watched the sword light in fear. The distance between him and Li Zijian wasn't great, and since he believed this was the sword cultivator who killed Guo Hongyao in just a few moves, he thought he'd be sliced clean through. But now he exhaled in relief, even feeling a touch of delight as he thought, it must be the pain from the merging fire causing his sword technique to be off. Such things weren't rare, and the situation was all too familiar for merging fire cultivators like him. Once merging fire latched onto someone, it damaged treasures and harmed life itself. The longer it lingered, the deadlier it became. The pain was beyond what ordinary people could bear. Now I've got a chance, thought Guo Hongkang. Since his spell couldn't stop his opponent, and as Li Zijian drew closer, Guo Hongkang, who had been preparing for a while, finally summoned a flying needle from his acupoint. It was gray-black, about a finger long, and unadorned, yet Guo Hongkang was overjoyed as he shouted, "Go!" Li Zijian had already drawn very close when he suddenly felt a stabbing pain in his Shenyang mansion. His face twisted with both pain and cold. With a single thought, the azure light on the screen beside him flickered, casting a sheet of dark blue radiance around him. Heavy Abyssal. The Heavy Abyssal Gale technique of the Changming Profound Insight screen was a suppression art, specifically meant to neutralize flying swords and Dharma lights. It immediately seized the black needle in midair and slowly ground it to a halt. Although Li Zijian had blocked the needle, he still coughed up blood. Even though the black needle had not struck him, it had still agitated the merging fire inside his body. The assault from within and without threw his insides into chaos. Forcing himself to stay conscious, Li Zijian activated Radiant Snow Pine Ridge, clearing pain and distraction from his mind. The blade in his hand lit up inch by inch as he advanced several steps. "Damn it," muttered Guo Hongkang. When he saw the sword cultivator approach once more, rendering his treasured Dharma artifact useless, Guo Hongkang panicked. The fire in his hand blazed, yet now he noticed that the sky was filled with heavy snow. Feather-like sword chi fell upon him, each like a blade piercing through his body, forcing a wretched scream from his throat. Autumn Moon's harmonious echo. All Guo Hongkang felt was a shattering sound by his ears. The 3 streaks of sword chi vanished, while cold surged through his Shenyang mansion. He had no foundation establishment realm Dharma robe to protect him, so his body was instantly reduced to minced flesh, dissolving midair into a rain of fire. The black jade box tumbled downward, but Li Zijian seized it in midair. Merging fire still throbbed painfully in his chest. He tucked the box into his robes and rode the wind, fleeing swiftly into the distance. Though the merging fire was still active and he couldn't use his perception arts for the moment, he had already made a sound deduction. This place is too close to Xifeng Island. Someone will surely come looking. I must leave immediately. Profound Peak Gate. Clouds swirled and music echoed on Uxie Peak, the main summit of Profound Peak. The Taoist master in the central seat wore plain robes, his white hair glistening like jade as it hung down. He raised his brows and looked to the side, smiling, fellow Taoist Junjian. A black-clothed man sat at the guest seat nearby, brow slightly furrowed, with a trace of iciness in his elegant expression. He only looked up at the clouds atop the peak, and when the Taoist master addressed him, he replied, "I certainly don't have any bright yang spirit items." He nudged the white jade cup before him, raised his brows to glance at the senior Taoist master Changxi, and said softly, Chengxia was busy earlier cleaning up Chengyin's mess, so he was severely restricted on all sides. He won't act recklessly now. Although Yushui lacks a life divine ability, both Taoist masters Hengxing and Quanjiu have taken action. The 2 of them used life divine abilities to shield everything. Chengxia won't be able to divine it. This move can no longer be reversed. Tu Longjian gently shook his head and replied, "The junior doesn't seem so simple. Chengxia is a master of manipulating fate. It's still too early to draw conclusions." The young man raised his brows slightly, then turned to look at Changxi and said, "All of you seem happy to let things unfold this way. Crimson Reef Island also wants the 6 Ding merging fire token in my possession. Even Taoist Master Zio has gone to the Northern Sea. Everyone keeps passing the matter around until it's forced to my doorstep, leaving me no choice but to go against Crimson Reef Island." Taoist Master Changxi, with his head full of radiant white hair, spoke gently, "That's how it is. Even if you don't want to choose a side, they'll force you to." If you wish to remain blameless, you must walk alone. Tu Longjian stood, gazing calmly at the elder before him and spoke softly, "Thank you for your guidance, senior." But this time, Crimson Reef Island made the first move. Either Tianwen did it intentionally, or her divine powers were lacking. Either way, reason is not on their side. I have no reason not to intervene. You're only willing to go because they're in the wrong. Otherwise, why would they have sent Gu Hongyao in the first place? Taoist Master Changxi gave him a long, deep look inside. The Li family are clever people. Their deep push into the Eastern Sea may well rely on your favor. In this chaotic world, even cultivators of the Purple Mansion realm who wield divine powers will end up like Dong Hua if they act solely out of emotion and righteousness. Tu Longjian laughed heartily as he played with an exquisite and charming small golden hammer that was no larger than a palm. As the great void opened before him, he stepped in, leaving only one sentence behind: "As long as my conscience is clear, that's enough." Chapter 924, Blazing Merging Fire I. Gu Hongjian had chased the dawn rayfish a long way but was still ultimately shaken off. By the time he returned on Merging Fire, even his escape light had dimmed and his mana was too depleted to keep going. What a pity. It's rare to encounter a Foundation Establishment realm dawn rayfish. Creatures of the Heavenly Glow lineage are far too adept at fleeing and can even knock away Dharma artifacts. Truly difficult to catch, muttered Gu Hongjian. The emergence of the dawn rayfish was due to the Great Flood during the Northern Sea's sky fracture. A dawn rayfish had taken the opportunity to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm. The conditions for such spirit beasts to evolve were extremely stringent, making it a rare treasure. Gu Hongjian missing it only deepened his regret. Though his cultivation technique was high grade, his immortal foundation, Heart Flame Aspiration, was not known for vast reserves. But after swallowing 2 pills, his mana recovered significantly. The cloudlight profound ring underfoot quivered slightly, accelerating his speed. Looking southward, he saw someone riding the wind in the distance. They were obscured within a Dharma artifact. Above him stood 8 painting screens arranged in a cylinder, radiating a mysterious golden hue that enveloped him. It seemed like a tiny dot of dull gold on the horizon. He clearly saw the gray-red merging fire flickering across the painting screens, refusing to extinguish no matter how much mana was poured into suppressing it. Gu Hongjian couldn't help but laugh heartily in his heart. Merging fire damages artifacts and harms the body. It can't be fully cleansed without several days of nurturing. Since merging fire was not exclusive to the Crimson Reef Island, Gu Hongjian didn't think too much of it. After flying a bit farther, he spotted a patch of gray clouds above Xifeng Island and several cultivators flitting through them like tiny black dots. Blazing merging fire streamed across the sky. Gu Hongjian came to a sudden halt, his pupils slowly widening. If he still couldn't understand at this point, he would be a true fool. His face twisted with murderous intent as he instantly turned around. The cloud ring beneath his feet burst into action as he drew out a gray-red fire token. He charged back, teeth clenched. "Scoundrel, don't you dare flee." This man must have harmed Hongkang. He naturally didn't believe his sister Gu Hongyao had died at the hands of this man. Considering the time he spent chasing the dawn rayfish, their departure from the island couldn't have been more than 2 to 4 hours apart. At most, the anomaly in the sky meant one death, and that could only be Gu Hongkang. Even so, Gu Hongjian's fury was undiminished. Although Gu Hongkang wasn't a blood relative, he was shrewd and resourceful. Gu Hongjian had always kept him close and often relied on his advice. It was utterly worthless for him to die here. Rage surged through his chest. Flames rose beneath his feet as he stepped onto the cloud ring and sped forth. The man had already become a barely visible speck on the horizon, but Gu Hongjian had memorized his figure in that brief glance and calculated that his speed was now far inferior. Prepare to die. Gu Hongjian cultivated the Heart Flame Aspiration, a technique with a slow escape spell. Thankfully, he had the aid of a Dharma artifact. Though still slower than a dawn rayfish, he surpassed most others in speed. His vital chi surged, leaving a red-white trail in the air as he rapidly closed in on the golden gleam without a word. As expected. I knew they wouldn't let me off so easily. Li Zijian had already noticed his pursuer. He could have used the immortal mirror to perceive the world and easily avoid the man. Gu Hongjian wouldn't even have gotten close to his shadow, but Li Zijian was meticulous in his thinking. With the Purple Mansion realm cultivators possibly involved, how could he dare arbitrarily change directions? Rather than exposing anomalies that would draw the suspicion and silent attention of more Purple Mansion realm cultivators, thus endangering his family, Li Zijian would rather take on more risk himself. At worst, his plan would fail. but the exposure of the immortal mirror could mean annihilation. When he saw Guo Hongjian drawing near, Li Zijian's spiritual sense immediately swept over the cloud ring under the man's feet. It glowed brightly, releasing waves of white Dharma light to support the middle-aged cultivator, causing Li Zijian to feel uneasy. He observed closely for a moment, then his heart stirred. He formed a hand seal and activated the Dharma artifact with his spiritual sense. A wave of dim cyan light flickered from the screen as he activated Heavy Abyssal Gale once again. Buzz. The sweeping cyan light swiftly locked onto the cloud ring under Guo Hongjian's feet. It flickered, then the cloud aura dispersed as the Dharma light shattered. It instantly reverted to its original form, no bigger than a ring, and was captured by the Chang'eming Profound Insight screen. What? Guo Hongjian was stunned and furious as he nearly fell out of the clouds. The fight hadn't even begun, and he almost coughed up blood. His heart trembled. What kind of Dharma artifact is that? Ridiculous. Guo Hongjian had just chased a dawn rayfish that specialized in knocking away Dharma artifacts. He was well aware of many spells and tools that could achieve this, but there was a difference between knocking down an artifact and outright capturing someone's flight tool. This was unheard of. And to do it so swiftly and cleanly. Since his artifact had been forcibly taken from him, his speed was greatly reduced. Guo Hongjian was no match for the person ahead. He was deeply shaken. Meanwhile, Li Zijian understood immediately. Heavy Abyssal Gale mimics the gale of the Great Western Plains. Even Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators can't fly in that wind. It doesn't just knock down Dharma artifacts, it disrupts the Dharma light that sustains them. Naturally, that includes the Cloud Ring's Dharma light. None of this artifact's three effects are simple. Guo Hongjian watched the distance widening again and felt a surge of greed, yet for a moment he hesitated. Flying sword, Dharma light, but the distance is too short for spellcasting, and everything else might be knocked down by that ironclad artifact. Who on earth is this person? He ran through all the possibilities, realizing that as long as the one using that artifact was fast enough, it would be nearly impossible to counter. But as he hesitated for 2 seconds, the distance had widened significantly again. His expression darkened. Pressing 2 fingers together, he drew out a wide sandalwood talisman, upon which was painted a vividly lifelike, scale-covered giant rat. Guo Hongjian chanted, "Scorching wind, heed my command, shuttle and race as one with fire." Li Zijian listened quietly. He sensed the talisman between Guo Hongjian's fingers release a puff of sandalwood red wind through his spiritual sense. It transformed midair into a long-scaled crimson rat, howled once, then turned into a gust of red wind, lifting him from below and propelling him north at great speed. This talisman was not ordinary. Called the Blazing Merging Fire Talisman, it was drawn by the Sandalwood Cloud Rat, the spirit pet of Crimson Reef's founding ancestor Guo Shentong. The Merging Fire spirit beast specialized in summoning a scorching wind. The talisman was originally crafted for a direct descendant's escape, but driven by greed and fury, Guo Hongjian didn't hesitate to use it for battle. The Sandalwood Red Fire wind gathered in an instant, and he rapidly closed the gap. Lifting his long command token to his lips, he exhaled, his eyes turning gray-red as he spat out a gout of merging fire. This flame was worlds apart from what Guo Hongjian had wielded. It was thicker, grander, and more scorching. It let out a strange cawing sound as the deep gray flame slammed against the screen with a thunderous boom. Li Zijian was already injured and low on mana, so the blast nearly knocked him from the sky. Merging fire blazed across the painting screens, devouring his mana like a whale swallowing water. Without mana support, the light of the Chang'eming Profound Insight screen dimmed all at once. Clang! As Guo Hongjian controlled the flames, the screen's light suddenly split apart, bursting forth with a dazzling sword light and falling like frost and snow. He watched coldly as a strand of red gauze flew from his sleeve, fluttering and twisting as it entangled the sword light. Chapter 925, Blazing Merging Fire II. The red gauze let out a muffled boom as though it had restrained a flood dragon. Whatever was within was struggling violently. Guo Hongjian was surprised and poured his mana into it as he asked, "Sword essence." Even sword essence is useless. He wasn't like Guo Hongyao. He immediately saw that the person inside the Dharma artifact was nearly out of mana. He didn't even need to act further. Just maintaining the fire for 7 minutes would cause the man to fall into the sea. Lost in the east, gained in the west. But Guo Hongjian had already grown greedy for this Dharma artifact, so a swift and decisive victory was best. Forming a seal with his fingers, he cast his spell and merging fire surged. Taking advantage of the moment, the man was entangled by the screen's fire and couldn't spare attention. Guo Hongjian rapidly gathered flames in his hand. Though Li Zijian was in dire straits, he remained calm. His pale gray eyes betrayed no emotion. The Chang'eming profound insight screen's glow had dimmed, and Han Lin had been sheathed and returned to his embrace. He reached into his sleeve and took out a talisman. The sandalwoodred talisman was the size of a palm and bore the image of a lifelike, scale-covered rat with golden, gleaming eyes that were already brimming with mana. The blazing, merging fire talisman. Li Zijian poured his remaining mana into it, mimicking the incantation word for word. His voice rang out clearly within the screen. Scorching wind, heed my command. Shuttle back and forth, merge and charge with fire. The talisman released a puff of sandalwood-red wind that transformed midair into a long-scaled crimson rat. It let out a shrill cry, then reverted into sandalwood wind, lifting him from beneath and propelling him north at great speed. Guo Hongjian, hearing that incantation, abruptly stopped his spell. He stared blankly at the vanishing gray-red glow in the distance, his mind completely blank. How can he have our family's blazing merging fire talisman? The gray fire in his hands was still flowing as he stood stunned, turned his head to look back at the path he'd come, and muttered in confusion, how does he know our family's incantation? Guo Hongjian turned his head back, but there was no trace of anyone left on the horizon. His expression was like a spilled jar of mixed as emotions twisted and transformed. He exclaimed in shock, that's right, I chanted it just now. He pondered for a breath, then quickly understood. He took a deep breath, eyes glistening, and squeezed out a few words through clenched teeth, my little sister, you murderer. But a troubling doubt slowly surfaced in Guo Hongjian's mind amid his grief. It lingered endlessly and refused to disperse, but even if he killed my little sister. Our Crimson Reef Island's direct descendant storage pouches aren't so easily opened. Even with an immortal foundation specializing in such arts, it would take 10 days to half a month. The curses and marking techniques within are also extremely advanced. Why was he completely unaffected? It can't be that my little sister took them out and gave them to him herself. Great void. A ripple stirred in the pitch-black great void as a woman in a simple Taoist robe appeared, holding a parasol in her arms. Her black hair was pinned back by a hairpin, and her eyes gazed through the void, fixed on the manifest world. She hesitated for a moment, then shook her head. So that's how it happened. Guo Hongyao, truly pathetic to the extreme. A Taoist master remained unseen beside her, but a deep, resonant voice echoed by her ear, a sharp-minded youngster, and skilled in swordsmanship too. The two of them could see clearly that the talisman that turned the tide had come from Guo Hongyao. The Guo family's storage pouches were notoriously difficult to open, but Guo Hongyao had held the talisman in her palm. When facing mortal peril, Guo Hongyao's first reaction had been to pull out this life-saving talisman exclusive to the direct descendants. She had only infused it with half her mana when Li Zijian struck with a sword technique and killed her. Thus, the talisman naturally fell into Li Zijian's hands. And just then, Guo Hongjian happened to be casting spells nearby, so he heard the full incantation clearly. Taoist Master Hengxing murmured. She extended a slender finger, calculated silently for a moment, and replied gently, that Dharma artifact, after all, was crafted with the ancient method and depicted 6 true monarchs. Even if they all attained the Tao and their visages were wiped from the screen, it remains a variable. A slight miscalculation is to be expected. Though calculations might not be off by a hair and miss by a mile, this small variable happened to collide with a crucial turning point in the conflict, and so slipped beyond her control. She still found it hard to believe and asked, isn't it all just too coincidental? Another Taoist master revealed himself in the great void. He was an unremarkable gray-robed elder carrying a sword on his back. He kept his hands behind his back as he said thoughtfully, do you suspect that he bears fate? The man gently shook his head as he continued, I cannot divine, nor do I understand fate and destiny, but I vaguely recall one thing. Back then, he was the one who killed Su Zio, the one fated to inherit merging fire. Could that have had an effect? Taoist Master Hengxing pondered for a moment, then shook her head. The Su Zio matter has no logic to it. If killing a fate-bearer could grant their destiny, then would Cheng Xiao, Gu Shentang, or Junjian still be alive? As for Li Zijian, everything he has done thus far aligned with the calculations. If he bore fate, he would have long deviated from the plan. The oversight of the painted screen was mine. Now that I've seen its mystery, I won't err again next time. The man nodded and asked, what about Tu Longjian? No harm, Taoist Master Hengxing nodded softly and answered, Li Zijian's heart is now shaken by merging fire. Just because Guo Hongjian failed to catch him red-handed doesn't mean this matter is over. It merely means fellow Taoist Tu Longjian must take the initiative. The necessary games must still be played. The sword-bearing elder gently shook his head and sighed. Junjian has an ancient spirit, but it is out of place in these times. As one who wields the sword, I often feel shame in my heart, which is why my sword intent remains unformed. If he had pursued the sword, perhaps he would already be a sword immortal by now. Taoist Master Hengxing's voice was gentle as she shook her head. He has the spirit of chivalry, and such a spirit must be free. He roamed the Eastern Sea unchecked when he was in the Foundation Establishment realm. A Purple Mansion realm cultivator's divine abilities could not subdue him. Even the cultivators of the three sects could not stop him, so who could? That is the true wind of heroism and righteousness. But once he reached the Purple Mansion realm, he could no longer act freely. A single word may save hundreds, yet on the other end doom thousands. Who can truly act freely in this muddled world? Even Donghua could not. Taoist Master Hengxing pressed her lips together slightly and replied, "When I attained the Purple Mansion realm, a senior once told me, for one who commands divine powers, the eyes are the weakest part of the entire body, and this is the reason why." Oh. The old man furrowed his brow slightly. He had never heard this saying. Most cultivators who attained the Purple Mansion realm could even discard their entire body without hesitation, let alone their eyes, so he asked doubtfully, "Taoist friend, please enlighten me." Taoist Master Hengxing spoke softly. All people possess compassion. When they witness suffering, they feel pain. Thus, for one who wields divine powers, the eyes beneath their brows become weaker than any other part of their body. The sword-bearing Taoist silently looked down and replied, "And so, we have the world as it is today." The two gradually faded into the great void. The old man let out a sigh, his voice low as he said, "Let us see how he chooses to face it." Chapter 926, Chivalry I. While Hengxing and her companion whispered within the great void, another section of the void glowed dimly with firelight. A black-robed youth sat cross-legged in the void, a small golden hammer in his palm. He looked up and nodded slightly. The void then shimmered with biting frost and howling wind. A middle-aged woman stood quietly within, watching. Below, Li Zijian had already ridden off on the scorching wind. She shook her head and said with a faint smile, "Quite formidable." Tu Longjian could not tell whether she was mocking Gu Hongyao or praising Li Zijian, and simply said in a low voice, "Greetings, Senior Tianwen. I'm unworthy of the title." Taoist Master Tianwen's tone was as cold as ice and snow. Frost trembled throughout the great void with each breath as she replied curtly. She was Gu Shentong's wife, and a direct descendant of the Golden Feather sect. Years ago, she had eloped with Gu Shentong in the Daoxuan sky, led Crimson Reef Island to its peak, and laid the foundation of its present legacy. She was now the island's only Purple Mansion realm cultivator who appeared openly. Tu Longjian's voice was clear and earnest as he replied, "The Li family harbors no hostility toward your island. It was only a necessary act of self-defense. Thankfully, Hongjian is unharmed. I ask for your understanding, Senior." Now that Tu Longjian had spoken, Taoist Master Tianwen's form was surrounded by swirling frost. She said coldly, "Gu Hongyao acted rashly and was slain by Li Zijian. Since Junjian owes the Li family a favor, that matter can be overlooked for your sake. But he also killed Gu Hongkeng and stole a treasured item. How do you propose we resolve that?" Tu Longjian knew full well that Li Zijian's slaying and looting was likely orchestrated by Hengzhu Dao Gate and was meant to force him down. Everyone watching, especially the Purple Mansion realm cultivators, surely understood this. Moreover, Hengzhu Dao Gate had acted under the guise of aiding the Li family, which made it hard to denounce. If he brought this up directly, he would be rejecting Hengzhu Dao Gate's entire faction and siding with Crimson Reef Island, an Eastern Sea faction. How could he agree to that? So he replied softly, "Your island acts with great force. In his panic, he may have overreacted." Panic. Tianwen was not willing to let it go. She shook her head and said, "Empty words, Taoist friend. I ask just one thing. You want to protect both Li Zijian's life and the Radiant Sky Stone. There's no such bargain in this world. Hand over the 6 Ding Merging Fire token, and we'll let everything go. From that moment on, you'll be an honored guest of Crimson Reef Island, and all matters between the Li family and us will be cleanly severed. Perfect harmony for both sides." Tianwen had deliberately sent Gu Hongyao and coordinated with Hengzhu Dao Gate, one stoking the fire, the other adding fuel, all for the sake of making this demand. How could Tu Longjian not see through it? He looked calmly at Tianwen and finally replied, "The 6 Ding Merging Fire token is of great use to me. I cannot hand it over just yet, Senior." Taoist Master Tianwen's expression turned cold. Tu Longjian stood quietly facing her. She was a late-stage Purple Mansion realm cultivator with 4 divine abilities, while he was only at the early stage. Yet Tu Longjian showed no fear. There was only one reason. If Tianwen made a move, Hengzhu Dao Gate, who had been fanning the flames all along, would surely take Tu Longjian's side. And that was precisely the outcome Hengzhu Dao Gate had been waiting for. Taoist Master Tianwen continued observing him carefully and spoke softly. In the past, I sent Gu Hongyao to Moongay's Lake to investigate Su Zhao, hoping to use his destiny to elevate that useless junior of mine. But unexpectedly, Su Zhao was slain by some other Taoist ahead of us, and the entire plan was thrown into chaos. The 6 Ding Merging Fire token ended up in your hands instead. Though the divine ability has been refined and the past can be forgiven, the 6 Ding Merging Fire token is an ancient spirit artifact. It is no trivial matter, and there's no rush. Taoist friend, take your time to consider. Although her tone was icy, her words were not forceful. Clearly, Crimson Reef Island's current position was not entirely ironclad. This Taoist master, who cultivated the cold essence divine ability, had no intention of offending him outright, but she still has something to rely on, thought Tu Longjian. Tu Longjian paused slightly. His eyes, burning with hazy flame, peered through the great void into the manifest world. Li Zijian had flown several hundred kilometers but could no longer suppress his injuries. Merging fire had attacked his heart, and he had collapsed on a distant island. Taoist Master Tianwen also looked toward the manifest world and spoke gently. Tu Longjian, my husband bore fate as well. People like you are born noble, with the strength to act righteously, and are always rewarded for your deeds. I'm curious, when ordinary people do good, are they ever repaid? Tu Longjian frowned and asked softly, Senior, you mean? Taoist Master Tianwen looked at him quietly and said, My divine ability tells me that 2 rogue cultivators will soon arrive at that island. They are from Jiangnan and were once favored by the Li family. Let us both refrain from using divine abilities. Will those 2 save him? Tu Longjian ran the scenario through his mind several times. Tianwen's approach was wild and unexpected, leaving him momentarily silent. Logically, he practiced the Molten Fire Dao, and Tianwen the Cold Essence Dao, so neither of them were skilled in divination. Their divine abilities clashed within the Great Void. Since Li Zijian was directly below, any calculation was near impossible. After a long moment, he thought to himself, the Li family is close to more Purple Mansion realm cultivators than just me. Besides, I have support, there's no need to fear her. If these 2 remember past kindnesses and choose not to help, then I'll still have the upper hand. Having settled his thoughts, he nodded and said, Then let us wait and see. Eastern Sea. The falling water rising storm lingered over the Eastern Sea year-round. A brief moment of clear skies had just passed, and now the skies darkened again as thunder rolled and fine drizzle veiled the air. Li Zijian flew several hundred kilometers. Merging fire had already pierced through his eyes, slowly suppressing the effects of the radiant snow pine ridge. It was only by sheer force of will that he managed to fly beyond the furthest island within the reach of the Qingzhou Reefs. But when he reached that point, the lingering dark force on his body suddenly seemed disrupted, then vanished. The taut string in Li Zijian's heart snapped with a thud, and he plunged headfirst toward the sea. Just before hitting the sea, he jolted awake. The ocean below belonged to the Dragon Clan and teemed with shrimp soldiers and crab generals. In his current condition, falling into their hands would spell near-certain capture. He had no choice but to force himself to fly a little farther, but there were no islands in sight. In his daze, he spotted a reef and struck it with a sleeveful of mana. A faint cracking sound followed, instantly freezing a block of solid ice upon it. As he fell, he barely managed to fling out a talisman, enveloping himself in its protection. Li Zijian finally lost consciousness and collapsed with a splash onto the ice. Rain veiled the world in mist, pattering rhythmically onto the ice. After a short while, 2 streaks of flight light approached from the north, trailing faint black tails. 2 rogue cultivators in Taoist robes rode the wind to the reef, circling twice before cautiously landing nearby. Chapter 927, Chivalry II. One looked over 70, hunched and stooped, as he held a long wooden sword with a cold, stern expression. The other was broad and younger, wielding an axe in each hand. He was thick-browed and sharp-eyed as he warily scanned the area. The cold-eyed elder glanced at the red-robed man, collapsed on the ice, and swallowed hard before whispering, Fellow Taoist Rui, take a look at this. The brawny man surnamed Rui frowned and glanced sideways at the flame surrounding the red-robed man. He replied, That's some intense flames. This cultivator looks seriously wounded and on the verge of death. Wait 10 hours or so, and he'll be in deep trouble. The old elder swallowed again and murmured, Fellow Taoist Rui, you have keen eyes. How can we let someone die before us? Let's save him quickly." The two exchanged glances and clearly saw the greed in each other's eyes. The burly man surnamed Rui responded, "Don't you see the light from that talisman on him? If we don't deal with that first, how can we save him?" The old elder hesitated for a moment and muttered, "But the clearing art talisman is so expensive. It's a life-saving treasure. I only have 3 left." But when he was glared at by the burly man surnamed Rui, the elder had no choice but to pull out the talisman from his sleeve. He cast a spell, muttered incantations, and finally pinched off a wisp of blue-green light from his fingertips, commanding, "Go." The bluish light burst apart with a pop, but the shield on the man's body only dimmed slightly. The two were stunned and thought inwardly, "What a treasure." Neither of them could recognize the talisman's type. They were startled when it hadn't shattered, but the red-robed man remained motionless and their eyes lit up. The cold-eyed elder said, "We've struck gold." They now knew the man before them had to be from a wealthy background. The elder hurriedly pulled out 2 more talismans and got another 2 from the burly man, drawing all 4 together into a single point on his fingertip. Still uneasy, he exchanged a glance with his companion. The two simultaneously drew out their Dharma artifacts, gathered their spell force, and shouted, "Break." The combined Dharma light everything they owned slammed into the shield, creating a loud boom. The shield dimmed to the brink of collapse, yet still held. Terrified, they raised their Dharma artifacts and started bashing it madly. After a long struggle, both were panting heavily and their mana was nearly depleted. At last, the light shield shattered with a crack. The elder, drenched in sweat, collapsed onto the ground and panted, "What a cursed disaster." The burly man swept the body with his spiritual sense, only for his hair to stand on end. He jumped back in place and cried out, "Damn it, Foundation Establishment Realm." He fled like he'd been stung by a scorpion. The elder froze for a moment, his legs shaking like leaves. He immediately leaped up into the air as the two fled north one after the other. Sea wind brushed past. After 7 minutes, the two returned sneakily, flying in and landing some distance away. One said, "If he had even a sliver of strength, he could have killed us both with a breath." Emboldened by their own logic, they moved forward again. Once they were nearby, the cold elder reached out his Dharma artifact with a trembling hand, his sword shaking as though it would fall. It took 2 tries before he finally hooked the storage pouch. He squinted and inspected the pouch closely. An image of a familiar large lake floated on its surface, stamped with a single large character, Li, the Qingdu Li family. The two had been in the outer seas recently, and were unaware the Li family had unified Moongaze Lake. They were momentarily speechless as they glanced at each other. The elder muttered a few words, then looked hesitantly at the burly man. Back on the riverbank, it was Li Qingheng who saved us with thunder. The one in the sky with the bow was Li Xuanfeng. They did us a favor after all. The burly man frowned, but the elder had already made up his mind. He said quietly, "Let's carry him back to the lake. Would the Li family treat us poorly for it?" They flew in again, landing near the ice with more composure this time. The burly man surnamed Rui glanced over, then suddenly stopped in his tracks, his face turning fearful as he whispered, "You've forgotten what kind of technique we practice." The elder frowned in confusion and replied, "What's the matter?" Even beyond the Eastern Sea, there are people secretly cultivating devil techniques in Jiangnan. The burly man said fearfully, "You don't understand. The Li family is a righteous lineage, and they despise cannibal cultivators above all. We've practiced blood-devouring devil techniques and consumed over 100 lives. How could their elders possibly spare us? You think we'll get a reward for returning him? He'll kill us with a single strike." The elder was shocked and frightened. After a moment of hesitation, he said, then, "We can only leave him here. Let's flee while we can." The burly man glanced at him secretly and said in a sorrowful voice, "We already broke his shield and touched his storage pouch. Do you think these families with countless immortal arts won't notice? If he truly dies and we don't help, they'll never forgive us." The cold elder suddenly felt caught between a rock and a hard place. He muttered, "What are we supposed to do now?" Seeing his hesitation, the burly man grew greedy again and said through gritted teeth, "Why don't we just steal his storage pouch and flee north? We can try our luck at Foundation Establishment Realm. Isn't that a stroke of fortune?" The elder was tempted. He weighed the storage pouch in his hand, torn with indecision. He murmured, "Fine, we'll do it your way." The burly man stepped closer and examined Li Zijian's face. After staring blankly for a moment, a chill ran down his spine. He muttered almost inaudibly, "Look at him, he's like a banished immortal. If he looked dim-witted, maybe it'd be fine, but someone this elegant must be a Li family sword cultivator. Who knows how divine his sword arts are? What exactly are you trying to say?" The elder, now truly uneasy, demanded. The burly man only whispered, "He must have divine sword skills. Either way, we're already offending the Lee family. Why not gamble it all on the Foundation establishment realm? We're going to die someday anyway. Better to kill him now and have one less threat later. Besides, the flames are already killing him. We just need to add 2 discreet sword thrusts and they'll never tell how he died. As long as it looks like he was burned to death, they'll assume it was done by someone who uses fire. But if he survives, he might just come after us for the storage pouch." Despite being only half-literate in cultivation matters, the burly man made it sound so convincing that it completely bluffed his companion. The elder had always followed the burly man's lead. Now confused and shaken, he could only watch as the man bent down and picked up the icy sword, hiding in the corner with a lowered head. The burly man tried drawing the sword twice, but Han Lin refused to leave its sheath. Its cold radiance flared, slicing open his palm and causing blood to gush. He cried out and flung the sword away, clutching his palm with a furious glare. Damn it! He snatched the elder's longsword and stabbed down at the man, but it was blocked by the Dharma robe's fabric. The sword wouldn't penetrate. Though he had been full of bravado, his hands trembled as he cried out in panic, "What is this thing?" He stabbed 3 more times, but it was all in vain. Taking a deep breath, he searched the edges of the Dharma robe for a gap and drove the sword toward the youth's abdomen. It felt like stabbing into cotton. The blade made no clear wound, only a series of scraping and grinding sounds as if something rock-solid lay beneath the flesh. The elder beside him saw clearly the heart and lungs glowing red with a stony hue. The sight burned his eyes and he leaped back like a startled toad, crying out, "Stone, his organs are made of red stone. Fellow Rui, let's run. Forget the storage pouch. Forget Foundation establishment." The burly man's face turned red as if he was about to bleed, and he muttered, "Cowardly old man. So what if we die? Foundation establishment realm is glorious." Chapter 928, Chivalry III. He focused on the youth's exposed neck, raised his sword, channeled mana into it, and swung with all his might, striking the youth's throat. Sparks flew through the air as the longsword got stuck at the throat. His hands trembled as it took him 3 tries to pull it out. He struck twice more before finally severing the youth's head. The sullen old man's legs trembled as he stared blankly. The burly man, surnamed Rui, let out a breath of relief. When he was just about to put away his sword, he saw the severed head shift downward an inch on its own and reattach seamlessly to the body. The skin was smooth and flawless, showing no trace of a cut. A cold chill surged through his body. His legs gave way and he collapsed onto the ground. His teeth chattered uncontrollably as the world spun around him. His eyes couldn't leave the neck. All color drained from the old man's face, leaving him pale as a corpse. When he heard Rui's teeth chatter, he stammered, What is going on? How would I know?" Rui snarled. The old man inched away, his hand outside his robe shaking violently, lips trembling. Rui faltered, I've never killed a Foundation establishment realm cultivator before." But seeing that the youth had not awakened, the burly man gradually regained some courage and muttered, "What's done is done. What's done is done." He actually picked up the longsword again, measured the position, changed to a vertical grip, and struck the center of the brows 3 times until he split the head in 2 with a sharp clang. "Are you trying to get yourself killed?" The old man's paper-white face regained a hint of color. Already hunched over, he leaped up like a startled toad and cried out in alarm, "You're going to die. You're going to die." The old man immediately rode the wind and sped northward, his escaping light tinged with streaks of red. He had clearly used a blood escape technique, as if something terrifying were chasing him. His light bobbed erratically through the sky, accompanied by howling cries echoing through the heavens, "You're going to die." The burly man surnamed Rui was nearly scared into wetting himself by those crazed shrieks. The severed head had somehow rejoined the body again. Stars danced in his eyes as he stared at the handsome face before him and muttered, trembling, "It's not like I haven't practiced devil techniques." Reattaching a head, what's so strange about that? He tried to reassure himself, but knowing the Lee family was a righteous family made the scene before him even more terrifying. The burly man raised his sword for the 3rd time and struck at the neck again. It took Taoist Rui 3 slashes to open the neck again. This time he was ready. He lunged forward, lifted the head, and moved it away from the neck, intending to toss it aside. But then he froze. The head in his hand had its eyes open. Those pale gray pupils stared quietly at him. That handsome face paired with those eyes exuded an eerie sanctity. Despite the colorless hue, Taoist Rui clearly sensed an icy chill within them. His heart felt like it would shatter. His head felt like it had been plunged into icy water, and every part of him shivered from the cold. The next moment the youth spoke. A burst of snow-white sword energy surged from his lips and teeth, transforming into countless blades of frost and snow that blasted forward. Taoist Rui's scream caught in his throat, and he was obliterated from head to toe. Only swirling snowstorms remained, stirring waves across the sea. Splash! 2 storage pouches fell to the ground and rolled twice. The head floated back to the body and fit perfectly onto the neck once more. The youth let out a breath, and only then did his pale gray eyes close. Great void. Tu Longjian had already sensed something was wrong when Taoist Rui entered the game. The situation had turned out completely contrary to expectations. Hangzhou Daogate clearly hadn't made a move to assist. They had not even sent a single message. Tianwen was not surprised. Tu Longjian's gaze swept across a certain place in the manifest world, and he too came to understand. Cheng Xiao, who had previously been delayed by Cheng Yin's matter, had clearly been feigning ignorance all along. Now he suddenly struck at Wang Fu, going with the flow and tying up Hangzhou Daogate's cultivators. With this, the Hangzhou Daogate could no longer pull Tu Longjian to their side. His only means of saving Li Zijin was to hand over the 6 Ding Merging Fire token. But after bungling the situation, Hangzhou Daogate, though they killed Wang Fu, had now made an enemy of Tu Longjian. So Taoist Master Tianwen stood before him, holding the winning hand, waiting for Tu Longjian to yield the 6 Ding Merging Fire token. Yet Tu Longjian remained unmoved, and thus Li Zijin was beheaded 3 times. But Tu Longjian remained calm, seemingly unconcerned. He didn't even open his eyes to look at the scene in the manifest world. He only gazed quietly at his opponent, in stark contrast to his prior behavior. Taoist Master Tianwen stared fixedly at him, silently sitting in the void, seemingly in disbelief. She sighed deeply and said, "Zhenjian, you are truly patient and calculating." Tu Longjian's voice was calm and steady as he replied, "Senior flatters me. I owed the Li family a favor. This radiant sky stone repays it in full. From now on, we are even. The rest is none of my concern." Taoist Master Tianwen glanced at the frost and snow on the sea, shook her head softly, and murmured, "Everyone calls you a chivalrous man, Tu Longjian, but in the end this is all there is to it." Having said that, she suddenly felt disinterested. I had hoped to use the currency of favor to gain the 6 Ding Merging Fire token in a deal without cost, but who would have thought he'd be so cold when it came down to it? I'll have to come up with another plan. She sighed in regret. After waiting so long with nothing to show for it, and with Cheng Xiao only able to buy limited time, dragging things out would only put her into a passive position. She glanced coldly at Tu Longjian, then vanished in the great void. Tu Longjian revealed himself above the sea, looked down at Li Zijin, formed a hand seal, and commanded, "Scarlet Sparrow, bear fire and deliver my order." A hazy flame flew from his sleeve, transforming into a huge sparrow the size of a tiger or leopard. It circled him once, then opened its beak and inhaled. The radiant sky stone, the storage pouch, Li Zijin, and everything else on the sea surface all flew into its belly. Tu Longjian said softly, "The radiant sky stone is here. Now we're even." The bird took his words into its belly as well and rode the wind southward. Tu Longjian glanced around, aware that many were watching from the great void, then turned and left. He returned all the way to his cave dwelling, where a young man in blue and white robes was already seated. He was handsome with slightly feminine features, and was examining the collection within the cave. Tu Longjian showed no surprise as he said calmly, "Thank you, Senior Puyu." This man was none other than Taoist Master Puyu, his longtime friend. Puyu took a seat by the jade table and said casually, "I've preserved the soul. After all, he hasn't learned divine abilities and his name isn't on the rolls, so he was easy to catch. A few old fellows have died. In all the mainland, I doubt anyone knows more about this than I do. They won't be able to tell, but you, going to all this trouble, you really thought it through." Tu Longjian's handsome face revealed a wry smile as he replied, "There were too many Purple Mansion realm cultivators watching. If I'd protected him directly, I'd never have peace with the Li family from then on. It would only convince those scheming against me to go deal with the Li family instead. Only now do I understand Taoist Master Xiao's way. He wanted to protect, but couldn't be close, know when to let go. Or else you end up harming the very ones you try to help." He sighed softly and continued, "Now that's settled. Li Zijin died in front of them, and my debt to the Li family is cleared. I no longer need to stand openly behind them. They also know now that trying to scheme against the Li family won't work on me. It'll be much easier to maneuver things moving forward." The black-robed youth shifted the topic and spoke solemnly, "Senior, you master yin and yang, life and death. As for Zijin, I leave it in your hands, Taoist Master." Chapter 929, Mistake. Tu Longjian gave a respectful salute. Taoist Master Puyu merely sat silently at the table, smiling as he looked into his cup. Tu Longjian pondered for a moment, then asked in a low voice, Taoist Master, you are versed in the arts of yin and yang. What is the usual price for performing such a technique? Several of the necessary treasures are native to my Pinglai. I can retrieve them easily. This spell isn't costly to cast on someone at Foundation Establishment realm, especially since he's young and his cultivation is clear and pure. But this art is a closely guarded secret of our lineage and unknown to ordinary immortals. Let's set the price aside for now. I have one question, if I could ask Junjian to resolve it for me. Taoist Master Puyu looked at him, a probing light in his eyes, and said with a smile, using this art on a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator is extremely rare. After all, death means death. I dwell in Pinglai and wander often. There would be no reason to make advance preparations. If one could prepare in advance, why would one need to die in the first place? He stood up, looked back at Tu Longjian, and said with deep meaning, however, it makes no sense. As soon as you reached the Purple Mansion realm, you visited my Pinglai several times, and even waited at the foot of the mountain for years just to see me. Your intention was clear, if we look at it from this angle. The smile slowly faded from Taoist Master Puyu's handsome face as he said quietly, Junjian, did you foresee today's events the moment you broke through to the Purple Mansion realm? Even with the great upheaval of Su State civil war in between, that's beyond calculation. Even a Maha would feel ashamed compared to such planning. Was it a Dharma relic, or the workings of someone else? Tu Longjian could only smile bitterly in his heart. He hadn't prepared for years specifically for Li Zijian. Tu Longjian had worked to build ties with Taoist Master Puyu, all this time solely for Gu who was sealed inside the 6 Ding Merging Fire token. Tu Longjian had been mentored by Gu for many years. Gu had once obtained treasures alongside Zhang Quotian and others within the Green Pine Temple's Grotto Heaven. Later, Tu Longjian had escaped danger thanks to a technique Gu left behind there. Since he owed him a great debt, Tu Longjian had always sought to find Gu a new body. It was well known that Taoist Master Puyu of Pinglai was a master in such arts, which was why Tu Longjian had visited him repeatedly. As for Li Zijian, his case was truly just a timely coincidence. Tu Longjian replied, if I merely wanted to sever ties with the Li family, I wouldn't need to go to such lengths. The matter with the Li family is just a coincidence. In my youth, I was displaced and lost all my family and friends. Their bodies were scattered and vanished over time. Upon hearing that Senior possessed divine arts to govern yin and yang, and is close with Judge Yang, I thought to request your aid, to inquire of the underworld where my kin's remains lie. He did not bring up Gu directly. Instead, he voiced a matter that had long weighed on his heart and said softly, even if I can't know where their bones fell, even if my father and kin ended up in someone's belly or were turned into Dharma artifacts, as long as I can know, I, Junjian, will repay the favor handsomely. I see. Taoist Master Puyu's narrow eyes narrowed further as he looked at Tu Longjian thoughtfully. He turned his jade cup and replied, so it truly was a coincidence. Junjian, you have a kind heart. In longing for one lost friend, you've saved another. Such is fate. He asked no more and responded, Li Xunfeng entrusted his orphan to me, since we once shared a fated connection. Though he is gone, he still barely counts as part of the Li family. I'll handle Li Zijian's matter. Pinglai happens to have recently grown a piece of Gyeokshuan Bright Frost. I'll carve out 60% and fashion a body for him. Tu Longjian let out a breath of relief when he realized he wasn't being threatened with the soul and drew something from his sleeve. The command token was interwoven with red and black patterns. A misty red glow formed from the 6 Ding Merging Fire token as he gave it a gentle tug. It was half gold and half silver as it hovered in his palm. Inside the command token, Gu wailed in anguish, his cries shaking the heavens, but Tu Longjian pretended not to hear and said respectfully, I cannot use Senior's spiritual item without recompense. This crimson gold white flame was something I obtained before attaining divine abilities. Please accept it as compensation. Centuries ago, a great snowfall blanketed the northern sea, forming a 5,000-kilometer snow mountain. Spiritual items of cold essence became abundant, but even among them, Gyeokshuan Bright Frost was exceptional. At the same time, even if 6/10 were carved out for Li Zijian, it still wouldn't surpass the crimson gold white flame. Taoist Master Puyu understood it was meant to aid the ritual and accepted it with a smile. The two exchanged a few casual words before Tu Longjian saw him off at the cave entrance. Returning to his desk, Tu Longjian sat down and brought 2 fingers to his lips, exhaling a puff of flame. The flame quickly formed into a human shape and immediately wailed, Tu Longjian, you. You used my treasure to curry favor, how unreasonable. Tu Longjian, rarely seeing him so flustered, was delighted inwardly, but kept a stern expression as he said quietly, Senior, what are you saying? Do you know why I did this? Gu glared at him in frustration and replied, Isn't it just to repay your precious senior's favor? Not at all. Tu Longjian replied with a serious expression, I must repay Senior Yuanjiao's kindness. Yes, but this was also for your sake. Think about it. Pu Yu is from Pinglai. He is ambiguous in nature, neither righteous nor evil. When crafting an immortal body, who's to say he won't plant any hidden tricks? If you enter it unaware, wouldn't you suffer terribly? Gu who had been watching all along, had truly not considered this and paused in surprise. Tu Longjian said earnestly, Once he finishes shaping the body, you too are skilled in this Tao. Though not as accomplished as the Taoist master, with Li Zijian as precedent, you can inspect and take precautions. Gu had no more words. He looked like he wanted to nod, but held back. After a long pause, he muttered gloomily, Fine. On his end, Taoist master Pu Yu left the Slaughter Jun Gate and made his way toward the Eastern Sea, traveling through the Great Void. As he formed seals and cast spells, the blue light in his hand transformed into a cyan sparrow that glided through the void. He silently calculated, Li Zijian, I should examine him thoroughly. This time, Tu Longjian invited me personally, and the timing checks out. There's nothing suspicious. Even if someone backs him, they can't fault me. He gently pressed on the jade box within his sleeve. His heart stirred slightly. Li Zijian's soul is unusual too. It's cold as snow, as if carrying a thread of fate. Those Purple Mansion realm cultivators simply aren't skilled enough to notice it. In truth, Taoist master Pu Yu had sensed it when holding the soul. It had resisted slightly when leaving the body, as if it had been tethered to something. These were classic signs of being entwined with fate. Since Li Zijian was so unusual, and the spirit item matched his immortal foundation, reshaping a body for him would not be difficult. Taoist master Pu Yu then began to consider Tu Longjian's request to find his kin. His Pinglai did indeed have close ties with the underworld. Judge Yang was a frequent guest, so Tu Longjian's request wasn't hard to fulfill. Pu Yu only pondered, Judge Yang's 9-layer attribute net is formidable. I'm not sure if that true essence fell into his hands. Asking directly would be inappropriate. It's best to leave it alone. A white ocean appeared below his feet, and a small mountain began to surface. Atop it stood a simple Taoist temple. Before even landing, Taoist master Pu Yu called out, Bring me the Gyeokshuan Bright Frost. Chapter 930, Mistake II, Eastern Sea. Waves surged across the sea as hundreds upon thousands of sword shadows from level beam peppered the surface. The overcast clouds completely smothered the sun, towering waves crashed skyward, and the entire region was shrouded in mist. The grand formation that had cloaked everything had been fully revealed. It radiated pulses of golden light as it fended off the Dharma artifacts launched by those outside. A red-robed woman had a complicated expression as she activated a petal-shaped ritual implement and knocked down several incoming Dharma artifacts. At Bai Yuzhuang's side, the Feng brothers each wielded spell arts, blocking most of the incoming Dharma light. The few that slipped through merely caused faint ripples on the formation's surface, doing little harm. Yet Bai Yuzhuang felt deeply uneasy. Wang Fu had already been in dire straits, but as a direct disciple of Changxiao Gate, it made no sense for him to die within a few moves. He had held out for 50 exchanges and unleashed 3 talismans in a row. Bai Yuzhuang had even forced out the life-saving Purple Mansion Realm talisman that she had dispelled with a prearranged one of her own. But now there was a growing crowd outside the formation. The cultivators of Qingzhou Workshop had arrived. Alarmed, Bai Yuzhuang had wanted to end the battle swiftly, but the formation suddenly trembled violently, on the verge of collapse. Not good. The formation in Bai Yuzhuang's hands was a treasured item called Yellow Cotton, a formation plate of the auspicious Essence Tao. It was considered outstanding even among Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. By rights, it should have easily lasted a while longer. Yet the moment those cultivators arrived, the formation had begun to shake uncontrollably. Bai Yuzhuang quickly realized something was wrong. When she connected to the formation plate through spiritual sense, she took a closer look and saw 8 cultivators outside, each holding a golden, slightly illusory spike, while another held a jade talisman linking the 8. Engraved Golden Astral Profound Destroyer. Bai Yuzhuang instantly recognized the Dharma artifact's origin. It was a treasure from the Golden Feather sect, famed alongside Azure Pond sect's Deadly Thunder Formation Destroyer. 8 of them would be more than enough to trouble a Foundation Establishment Realm formation like hers. This was disregarding the immense value of yellow cotton, which was a portable formation plate and nearly impossible to buy. If it were to be broken by these Dharma artifacts, the loss would be devastating. It wouldn't last 9 hits against the engraved Golden Astral Profound Destroyer, which was barely 10 seconds of time. Once the formation broke, not only would the cultivators pour in, but Wang Fu, with his storage pouch full of escape techniques, would immediately flee. Since Li Qingheng and others were secretly aiding her, even if Wang Fu escaped, Bai Yuzhuang could not let them expose their tracks. She had no choice but to bring the Feng brothers out of the formation to confront the enemy and block the engraved Golden Astral Profound Destroyer herself. She didn't believe that this would let Wang Fu escape death, but the worry weighing on her heart remained, not for Wang Fu, but for her Taoist master. Why is the engraved Golden Astral Profound Destroyer of the Golden Feather sect here? How did they track us down? Changxiao Gate must have acted. This may ruin the Taoist master's plans. She knew that once she left the formation, Taoist master Hengxing would stay behind to guard it. Although she only understood part of her Taoist master's schemes, the circumstances clearly looked grim. While she thought furiously from outside the formation, the battle within was nearing a conclusion. Wang Fu's robes fluttered wildly. His body was riddled with wounds as lightning coursed over his skin. His bloodshot eyes reflected the crashing strikes outside the formation, yet there was not a trace of joy on his face. Before him, Li Qingheng rode thunder, commanding lightning at her feet, while Chen Xunyu held a pitch-black sword in his arms, his expression calm and unreadable. Fellow Taoist Li. Wang Fu looked solemnly at Li Qingheng, his voice hoarse and expression even tinged with acceptance. A large bell trembled and flew forth from his side, blocking part of the surrounding sword chi. He gasped and asked, "I know full well I've become a discarded pawn. I presume my private ties with Minghui were exposed before the Taoist master. He hates Jinlian, and so he wants me dead." As he spoke, a deeper thought seemed to flicker in his eyes. He said quietly, "I simply don't understand what I have done to offend your esteemed family. To warrant being hunted down like this." Li Qingheng exhaled deeply and did not answer. One hand held her spear at an angle, while 6 silver-white command tokens circled the other. Chen Xunyu's sword essence grew sharper, his voice low. "Pay him no heed. Be on guard for deception." Seeing her silence, Wang Fu growled bitterly. "Changxiao Gate refused to find me a purple mansion realm technique, and I did not resent him for it. But why wouldn't they let me seek it myself? Lesser Yang is a Dao lineage of Great Liang. If I didn't travel north to inquire, how else was I supposed to find my Dao?" Li Qingheng found his words a little too deliberate. As she summoned silver lightning to crash thunderously down on Wang Fu's great bell, she thought to herself, though Purple Mansion realm cultivators are powerful, they can't observe what's happening inside this formation unless they pierce the great void and enter. Even Changxiao Gate can neither hear nor see inside here, she observed quietly. She let her spiritual sense run along the lightning pulses and eventually spotted a jade inside Wang Fu's storage pouch flickering with Dharma light. She silently made note of it. Beside her, Chen Xunyu gave him no more chances to speak. Sword light danced from his blade, falling like a rain of blades and pounding on the bell with thunderous booms. Lightning poured like rain, threatening to slice through Wang Fu's body and forcing him to raise the bell once again for protection. Cornered and out of options, Wang Fu could do little. Chen Xunyu had anticipated his movements and flung a golden ring from his sleeve, which transformed into a flash of gold that struck down like lightning. With a deep clang, the bell's radiance dimmed and its Dharma light dispersed completely. Wang Fu was just beginning to panic when he suddenly felt burning heat across his face, as though under the noonday sun. A brilliant white light seemed to emerge from nowhere into the sky and coalesced into a towering radiant gate. The gate shimmered with radiant light as it crashed down with blinding speed. Caught mid-movement, Wang Fu had no time to react. He sighed inwardly. There was one more after all. Li Ziming had been hiding within the clouds above Hengzhu Dao Gate as backup in case Wang Fu tried to flee. This strike had been long prepared and was backed with immense power. The Radiant Origin Pass was of high grade and landed squarely upon Wang Fu. Wang Fu's internal mana was nearly spent. That single blow shattered all his techniques. Several Dharma artifacts fell apart, and the Radiant Origin Pass impacted the sea, unleashing a thunderous blast. Boom! Li Ziming didn't dare be careless and channeled all his power to suppress Wang Fu. Li Qingheng dispelled her lightning and descended with Chen Xunyu. Most of Wang Fu's body was pinned beneath the glowing barrier, unable to move, and what little mana he gathered was steadily dissolved by the Radiant Origin Pass. His head, exposed outside, remained completely still. Naturally, the Li family didn't dare kill him themselves. The middle-aged man saw their hesitation and said softly, "I'll do it." Sword essence flowed along his blade as he ended Wang Fu's life with one strike. Li Qinghong flicked her spear, hooking Wang Fu's storage pouch. Li Ziming withdrew his mana and retrieved Wang Fu's corpse. Removing his robe, he drew a small silver-white box from the sleeve. But it wasn't the right time to investigate. Suppressing his unease, he followed the others and slipped into the clouds. Above them, celestial anomalies slowly emerged. Gales howled and demonic murmurs buzzed through the sky. Chapter 931, Exchange. Bai Yuzhuang's yellow cotton reverted to its formation plate form and was tucked away into her red robe. She glanced at the corpse suspended midair. Wang Fu's body was convulsing and twitching, blood gushing out in streams and transforming into multicolored worms that burrowed into the sea. His body parts seemed to have wills of their own as they struggled in different directions. In the brief moment it took Bai Yuzhuang to put away the formation plate, his body had already torn into 3 pieces, each drifting west, north, and east. Only then did she confirm he was truly dead. She immediately activated the talisman she had prepared, blocking the approaching Dharma artifact, then signaled the Feng brothers, who swiftly flew off in different directions. Taking advantage of the chaos, Bai Yuzhuang herself vanished into the clouds. The Changxiao Gate cultivators below were thrown into disarray. Some scattered in pursuit of Wang Fu's remains, others split into 2 groups to chase the Feng brothers, while the rest stood bewildered, unsure what to do. Bai Yuzhuang let out a quiet breath but stayed alert, aware that a Changxiao Gate cultivator might suddenly appear beside her. She sped southward with the Li family group and Chen Xunyu, crossing Tianzhu Island and landing once more on the main island of Suzhou. They entered the small pavilion together. Only then did Bai Yuzhuang allow herself to relax, hiding her concern as she looked at Li Qinghong and asked gently, "Are any of you injured?" "No." Wang Fu had never been a combat-focused cultivator, unlike their side, which had a thunder cultivator and a sword cultivator. Bai Yuzhuang had exhausted his trump cards, and Li Ziming's ambush struck true. Forget Wang Fu, even his master Zhou Han might have died on the spot under such an assault. Li Qinghong simply took out the storage pouch. Li Ziming placed the small silver-white box onto the table. Wang Fu's sword, bell, and pearl were now in Chen Xunyu's keeping. Their true forms were not large, yet each emitted an enchanting Dharma glow as they were laid beside the table. Bai Yuzhuang looked toward the aunt and nephew from the Li family and said softly, "Please." Li Qinghong glanced at the silver-white box, already having some idea of its contents. She showed no hint of disappointment as she gently took it and extended her spiritual sense into it. An inch-long streak of radiant light swirled inside the box, flicking its tail like a white snake. It darted around the box and, upon encountering her spiritual sense, shrank in fright into a corner. Unable to identify the item, Li Qinghong passed it to Bai Yuzhuang, motioning for her to examine it. Bai Yuzhuang frowned as she inspected it, then handed it to Chen Xunyu, who said, "Looks like a purple mansion realm spiritual item from the ancient merging Dao lineage." A hint of desire flashed in Bai Yuzhuang's eyes, but she refrained from speaking further, simply nodding politely and saying, "Most likely a whole pill Dao spirit item of the purple mansion realm." Li Qinghong let out a quiet sigh and placed the silver-white box to the side. After a brief moment, Bai Yuzhuang spoke, "There's nothing more valuable on his person. The 3 Dharma artifacts have been split among us. As for the storage pouch, it won't be easy to open. It might take 10 days or even half a month." She pushed the box toward Li Qinghong, who rested her hand on it and after a moment's thought said gently, "It seems this item is of little use to us for now. Best to leave it with your esteemed island. If any passing cultivators are interested, perhaps it can be exchanged for something our family actually needs." Since the item had no great use to her family, Li Qinghong naturally didn't want to bring it all the way back to the inland. Keeping it at home was also unwise, since it might cause trouble for no reason. At the same time, the allure of a purple mansion realm spirit item from the ancient merging Dao lineage to Hangzhou Dao Gate was obvious. As soon as Li Qinghong said that, Bai Yuzhuang's delight nearly overflowed from her eyes. She nodded repeatedly and replied, "May I ask what your esteemed family is seeking? I will do my utmost to locate it." Naturally, Bai Yuzhuang had no intention of handing it off to some passing cultivator. She clearly intended to claim it for Hangzhou Dao Gate herself. Li Qinghong, too, was pleased that only Hangzhou Dao Gate would know about it, and said calmly, "A bright yang spirit item." Bai Yuzhuang nodded in agreement. Li Qinghong then gestured toward the 3 Dharma artifacts and said softly, "Our family dares not hold on to these 3 Dharma artifacts. Please entrust them to your gate, We hope to exchange them for others of similar value. Leave it to me, Bai Yuzhuang nodded in reply. Chen Xunyu also spoke up, his voice steady. Fellow Taoist Qingheng is wise. My Chen family likewise can't openly carry these items. Let's exchange them all together. Having eliminated an enemy and gained the chance to obtain a coveted treasure, Bai Yuzhuang was in high spirits. She smiled as she said, "Very well." Li Qingheng looked toward Li Ziming. The young man showed no sign of disappointment, only a hint of weariness in his gaze. She said gently, "Ziming, go ahead and choose a Dharma artifact. I'd like to speak with the elder a bit longer." Li Ziming immediately rose and left. Since she had said so, Chen Xunyu naturally stood up as well. The dignified, sword-bearing middle-aged man said courteously, "I'll go take a look too. It'd be better than making another trip later. Saves us some effort." The two were led away by Hangzhou Dao Gate cultivators to view the treasury. After a moment of hesitation, Li Qingheng said softly, "Senior, does your esteemed family happen to have a Purple Mansion Realm inheritance of the Rainbow Mist Dao?" Rainbow Mist. Bai Yuzhuang thought for a moment, then understood and replied, "That's rare. It usually appears among the Dragon clans or the Luoxia upper sex Dao lineage. Our Hangzhou Dao Gate does not possess it, but I can keep an eye out for you." Li Qingheng shook her head and replied, "No need to go out of your way, just asking. But if any bright Yang Dao lineage or items other than the Radiant Origin Pass appear, and it's convenient, please send a letter to my lake estate. I'd like to stay informed. Ideally, it would be a bright Yang spirit item." "All right." Bai Yuzhuang responded softly and said, "Qingheng, there's no need to worry too much. Things often take unexpected turns." Li Qingheng was already deep in thought. Hearing those words made her a little more uneasy. She no longer had the heart to continue chatting and stood to take her leave, but Bai Yuzhuang quickly said, "If you've chosen your Dharma artifacts, Taoist Chen is also returning to Jiangnan. Traveling together with your companions would ensure everyone looks out for one another." Li Qingheng naturally welcomed the idea and respectfully took her leave. Once she exited the quaint and elegant pavilion, she descended the stairs and noticed that Li Ziming had not gone to select any Dharma artifacts. He was simply standing to the side, waiting. "This is..." Li Qingheng looked slightly puzzled. The young man's face was thoughtful, and as mana surged around him, he transmitted his voice to her. "Aunt, if bright Yang spirit items truly are that rare, perhaps we should consider trying the Rainbow Mist Dao Purple Mansion Realm technique. Brother Zijai is already in the late Foundation Establishment realm. His innate talent isn't lacking, and his temperament is far steadier than mine." Li Ziming's expression remained contemplative as he continued, "We could wait endlessly for a bright Yang spirit item, which may only delay things further. That wouldn't be ideal. As for advancing to the Purple Mansion realm, the longer I hesitate, the more dangerous it becomes. Even if I fail, there's still Mingwang. If the Rainbow Mist technique is good enough, we could let Brother Zijai try it. It might open up a different path for him." Li Qingheng pressed her lips together and looked at him, worry and unease in her apricot eyes. She shook her head and said, "I understand. For now, go choose a Dharma artifact. We need to leave quickly. Given your eighth brother's cautious nature, he's surely gone ahead to investigate the island. If he finds out the spirit item wasn't taken out, he'll definitely make other plans." Worry about your younger brother. Chapter 932, Pinglai I. Li Ziming entered the treasure vault alongside the red-robed disciples of Hangzhou Dao Gate. Chen Xunyu walked ahead with him, while Li Qingheng quietly followed a step behind, somewhat lost in thought. Though Hangzhou Dao Gate was considered orthodox, Li Qingheng dared not fully trust it. Still, whatever she needed to exchange, she could only go to Hangzhou Dao Gate and no other. There was no other reason. Her family's spirit item taken from Wang Fu belonged to the ancient merging Dao lineage and had already been revealed before the Hangzhou Dao Gate cultivators, who practiced the same Dao. There was no hiding it now. With Bai Yuzhuang's desire plainly written on her face, Li Qingheng had no choice but to go along with the flow. But when she thought more deeply, suspicion crept in. Could the ancient merging Dao spirit item Wang Fu brought out be part of Hangzhou Dao Gate's plan? This journey was far too easy. Why did the profound Peak Gate urge my family to make this trip? Surely, their motives lie elsewhere. After this journey, Li Qingheng felt as though she had been led by the nose. Deep down, she already understood that what her family wanted and possessed had long been laid bare before all the Purple Mansion realm cultivators. My family is not like the Zhao family. We have no Zhao Xianyu laying a foundation for 300 years, nor the scheming of Zhao shooting. Ziming has cultivated Purple Mansion Realm secret techniques, but can the Purple Mansion Realm cultivators see it? If they can, hiding it is pointless. Now, only one thought filled her heart. Whether my family can break through to the Purple Mansion realm depends on whether the various Purple Mansion realm cultivators will allow a cultivator surnamed Li among them. Even if it was allowed, it would be just a trial. The chance of success may still be pitifully low. Even as she remained deep in thought, Li Ziming had already come to a stop up ahead. A red-robed Taoist retrieved a small crimson-yellow flag from the spirit shield. It was embroidered with a red sparrow and had 5 rays of red light drawn around it. He introduced it. This item was acquired by our Hengzhu Dao Gate from the Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven. It is called the Yang Li Red Sparrow Banner and possesses abilities to spew spiritual flames, dispel spell arts, vibrate with separation light, and impact spiritual sense. This treasure comes from a grotto heaven, so its materials are naturally excellent. Unfortunately, it was forged during the later years of the Dongli sect and is not of ancient make. It's a few notches inferior in comparison. When he saw that Li Ziming looked tempted, he reminded, "This Dharma artifact's flames are ferocious. It is best suited for cultivators of the Li Fire. If your cultivation method clashes with it, you likely won't be able to use it. Even if it is unrelated, the Dharma artifact may burn the wielder. If the method isn't of Li Fire, it's best to at least be of fire virtue." Chen Xunyu glanced at it carefully, then softly said, "The bright Yang Dao seizes light and captures flame. Its fire arts are just below the 5 fires. This piece would serve well in hand." Though Chen Xunyu had not seen Li Ziming act much earlier, he had already witnessed the power of the Radiant Origin Pass and now spoke kindly. Ziming's cultivation method excels at suppression. Li Fire can be used to refine items. Its incinerating power is just below true flame, but it's more enduring and burns fiercer with time. It suits Ziming's immortal foundation quite well. Li Ziming nodded, set the item down, and continued browsing the vault. The 3 Dharma artifacts from Wang Fu were all extraordinary. Naturally, Hengzhu Dao Gate would not bring out standard-issue Dharma artifacts. However, there was only one of the bright Yang Dao among those currently displayed. This Dharma artifact was a flask used to suppress enemies, and clearly too similar in effect to Li Ziming's immortal foundation. There was also a powerful sword of the Cold Essence Dao, but since Li Zijin already had Han Lin, taking it would be redundant. After careful consideration, Li Ziming still decided to take the Yang Li Red Sparrow Banner. Though it was a Li Fire Dharma artifact, it came from the Eastern Fire Grotto Heaven of the Bright Yang Dao lineage, and was thus suitable for Bright Yang practitioners as well. Li Ziming turned to look at Li Qingheng. After she nodded, Chen Xunyu took out a treasure pagoda and stored the artifact. He showed no joy, likely because his own arsenal was already complete. This item was probably destined as a reward for others. The 3 of them took their Dharma artifacts and went together to bid farewell to Bai Yuzhuang. The red-robed woman seemed to have received some news and came forward with some hesitation, looking only at Chen Xunyu as she softly said, "Fellow Taoist, please take this white wand with you and help escort Qingheng and the other back to the Li family. I leave the spirit veil in your care for now. Someone from our Dao Gate will retrieve it later." She revealed a swathe of white silk in her hand. It was clearly the concealment Dharma artifact used earlier when ambushing Wang Fu. Chen Xunyu did not ask further. He simply took the silk, bade her farewell, and departed with the 2. The red pavilion was suddenly quiet. Bai Yuzhuang sat down by the table, finally showing a trace of guilt. She let her head sink into her hands, unease creeping into her heart. "Qingheng must think I sent Zijin away on purpose. Harmed him? I was clearly helping her. How did it come to this?" She had a good impression of Li Qingheng. She had just praised Li Zijin, yet now found herself blamed for his death. Her heart was a tangled mess. When the red-robed Taoist stepped forward to report which Dharma artifacts the 2 families had taken, she couldn't be bothered to listen and simply waved him away. True, trading with an early Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator for a Purple Mansion Realm spirit item is an unbelievably good deal, but such things can't be measured like that. Bai Yuzhuang paced the room twice. That silver-white box still sat on the table. She gazed at it for a moment and silently thought, "Let me hold on to it for her. If something happens in the future, this gives the elder a reason to lend a hand." Pinglai. Pinglai was said to be an immortal mountain above the Eastern Sea, appearing and disappearing at will. Most of the 3 sects and 7 gates regarded it as a grotto heaven. Very few had ever set foot inside, and the cultivators within were scarce. There were only a scattered few dozen silhouettes across the vast white expanse. The sky here was snow-white, with neither sun nor moon, yet quietly infused with radiant light. Mountain ranges undulated beneath the sea, which was itself white. Small islands dotted the water between the 2 vast white expanses. Spirit fish swam within the sea, and reefs and spirit trees of all colors adorned the sea with vivid contrast. Two cultivators in ancient Taoist robes, their hair bound in ceremonial crowns, walked upon the water, chatting merrily. A young man in white stood before them, hands clasped behind his back, curiously observing the scenery. Yet the two Pinglai cultivators seemed not to notice him, walking straight toward him without hesitation. The youth in white did not move aside, his form seemed illusory. The two Pinglai cultivators passed straight through him as though he weren't there. He remained where he stood, gazing out at the sea as he sighed. So this is Pinglai. Lu Jiangxian had long been curious about this place. Strictly speaking, he had not truly entered it. He was watching a reflection within the mirror, a scene projected by the immortal mirror's core, which, through talisman seeds planted in the great void, was channeling images back through the jade box that held Li Zijian's soul. Having been trapped inside the mirror for over 100 years, Lu Jiangxian had endured immense psychological torment. Even watching these illusory visions returned from afar, he still conjured a physical form to walk through them, if only for a sliver of solace. Though Li Zijian's soul had left his body, the talisman seeds remained linked to him. Chapter 933, Pinglai II. The people of the Li family often believed that talisman seeds resided in the Qi acupoint, for ever since they started cultivating, the small white seed could be sensed resting at the base of the Qi. It was quite easy to recognize. But as the one who had implanted them, Lu Jiangxian understood them more deeply. Once talisman seeds were introduced into the body, they did not just reside in the Qi, but also within the Shenyang and Juk acupoints. If a Li family member formed a divine ability, the talisman seeds could also be glimpsed within those two centers. Rather than saying the talisman seeds were located in those three acupoints, it would be more accurate to say they could be visualized there through inner focus. That was why, though the Li family had long feared others might detect the talisman seeds within the Qi, in truth, even a Purple Mansion realm spiritual sense, probing the area would find it utterly empty. Since Li Zijian's soul had been preserved and not dissipated, the talisman seeds naturally had not returned either. They remained linked to him, and once he obtained a new body and resumed cultivation, he would be able to see the talisman seeds within his Qi once again. Therefore, Lu Jiangxian had no concern that Li Zijian would fall into some prenatal confusion when his body was rebuilt, or that the cultivators of Pinglai might uncover the secret. Even if they captured and interrogated Li Zijian's soul, the talisman seeds would still function. As for this round of Purple Mansion realm contention, the gains are not insignificant. Lu Jiangxian followed the two Taoists, sorting through his thoughts. There seems to be little true resistance among the sects and factions toward the Li family forming a Purple Mansion realm. On the contrary, many appear willing to go along with the flow. After all, no existing Purple Mansion realm cultivator bears a deep grudge against the Li family. At most, it's just the clashing of pawns, not a real conflict. At worst, Changxiao Gate and Crimson Reef Island are somewhat unwilling, but it's not to the extent of wanting to wipe them out. After all, in the eyes of the Purple Mansion realm elites, Li Ziming wasn't particularly impressive. Giving him even a 20% chance was probably overstating it. In Lu Jiangxian's opinion, more than half of the Purple Mansion realm cultivators thought the Li family was currently just flailing. The one truly worth watching, Li Xiaowei, was still a long way off. As Lu Jiangxian thought things over, the two Pinglai cultivators ahead came to a halt. Two more figures descended from the outer heavens. The one in front wore the garb of a Pinglai cultivator and was slightly older, with an air of immortality and Taoist grace. He was followed by a youth wearing a Taoist crown, clad in gold-embroidered robes. His appearance was unremarkable, but a peachwood sword hung at his waist, and he had an enormous sword case strapped on his back. It was luxurious and elegant, engraved with 128 cloud patterns. The case had 16 sword slots that sealed sword qi within. Lu Jiangxian trembled slightly in surprise. He actually recognized this person. It was the sword immortal Wang Zun of the Yinghua Wang clan. This was the great-grandson of Xiaojun, true monarch of the Xiao metal lineage, and the son of Taoist master Yingyuan. This youth had an impressive background. In his quest to witness the sword intents of the world, he had once visited the Li family to observe Li Qijing's sword intent, and had even left behind Wanglin blossom seeds as compensation. Now that his sword case had taken form outside his body, with all 16 sword intents gathered, it was clear he had already cultivated a divine ability. Though now honored as a Taoist master, Wang Zun still retained a pure and lively spirit. His youthful charm was evident, and he was far more sociable than in the past. Smiling, he greeted the two Pinglai cultivators. "Greetings, fellow Taoists. We dare not, we dare not." The two cultivators quickly stepped aside to avoid his bow, speaking in hushed tones. "This junior pays respects to the Taoist master." The middle-aged cultivator clearly didn't care for such formalities. He stopped the greeting, waved the others away, and led Wang Zun back with a smile. "Fellow Wang, if I'm not mistaken, this is your first time visiting our Pinglai Immortal Mountain." Wang Zun nodded. The two descended directly down onto a barren mountaintop, upon which sat a dilapidated Taoist temple. It had a well out front, with a broken wooden bucket resting on the edge. It hardly resembled a place fit for a Taoist master. The middle-aged Taoist seemed entirely unbothered and pushed the door open. The two sat down in a side room within the courtyard and started sipping tea. Lu Jiangxian casually sat on the threshold, his white robe embroidered with sun and moon motifs draping loosely as he listened with folded arms. When the middle-aged cultivator took his seat, Wang Zun recalled some of the polite phrases he had memorized. He decided to start by praising the man's Tao lineage, and with a smile, glanced at the jade shelves on either side and said without thinking, "Fellow Taoist, your Tao collection here is truly..." He had only spoken halfway when the words caught in his throat. The jade shelves were completely bare. Where one would expect ancient books and jade slips, there was nothing but a single turtle shell. Wang Zun stared in a daze. His compliment was stuck mid-sentence, and his rehearsed flattery now hung awkwardly in the air. Unsure what to say next, Lu Jiangxian glanced at him and silently thought, "I thought the young sword Immortal Wang had matured. Turns out he had simply memorized it all ahead of time." Seeing his discomfort, the middle-aged Taoist quickly spoke up. "Just so you know, fellow Taoist, here in Pinglai Immortal Realm, we never keep books or slips on shelves. Our entire Tao lineage is stored within the Kongtang Immortal Text, preserved beneath the sea. If ever needed, we access it directly with spiritual sense." Wang Zun let out a breath of relief and responded without hesitation, "To think such a treasure exists, this immortal realm truly lives up to its name." His answer made the middle-aged Taoist pause, then smile and counter, "Do you know the reason behind it? I'd be glad to hear it in detail." Wang Zun was beginning to find his rhythm and replied cleanly. The middle-aged Taoist chuckled. "This rule has been in place since the founding of Pinglai Immortal Realm. It's been countless years and was established by an immortal lord, so no one has dared to violate it. The reason is actually quite a curious tale." He stroked his beard and began to recount slowly. "It is said that many immortals resided in Pinglai in ancient times. Countless immortal arts and techniques abounded. Then one such immortal lord named Chufu traveled the 9 continents and encountered another immortal lord in the ancient Jin state. The two had a disagreement over their Tao lineages, and a quarrel broke out above the Jin River. As is often the case with immortals, their words held power, and the river began to flow backward, flooding a mortal army. The immortal lords themselves were unharmed, of course, but the Jin state's army below was forced to retreat, altering a fate that was meant to be. As a result, both immortal lords were chastised by the heavenly Tao, with endless roaring thunder. Chufu Immortal Lord had no choice but to return to Pinglai, only to discover that the other immortal lord had secretly followed him. With his extraordinary auditory arts, he managed to overhear and read the entire Tao collection of the Grotto Heaven. What? Wang Zun was stunned for a moment and found it hard to believe, but upon reflection, it felt oddly reasonable. He replied, "After all, the arts of immortal lords are beyond measure." The middle-aged Taoist sighed softly and answered. Chufu only realized it afterward and flew into a rage. The two fought in the outer heavens, causing the golden crow to shift from its place and the stars to veer from their courses. Several immortal lords came to watch the battle, and it disrupted the mortal realm's formation plates, making spiritual energy shift every 3 days. Though the two eventually reconciled and became friends, and the other immortal lord even gifted him a stele inscribed with immortal arts that was sunk into the sea, this tradition has been passed down ever since. He chuckled warmly, subtly revealing the depth of his Tao lineage, then glanced at the turtle shell on the jade shelf and smiled. As for this turtle shell, after the two immortal lords became friends, Chufu took to placing a turtle shell on the shelf. He said the other immortal lord had practiced techniques for avoiding the 3 disasters and 9 tribulations and for achieving immortality, and thus was overly cautious. The turtle shell was a gentle jab at his nature. Chapter 934, Making Amends. Oh. A hint of embarrassment rose in Lu Jiangxian, who had been crouching by the door, as he thought, "So that's why. I've wandered all over Pinglai for so long without seeing a single manual or jade slip. It was all sealed away with a Dharma relic." He shook his sleeve and muttered, sticking to outdated rules, stubborn tradition. What age are we even in? Are cultivation methods still such inconvenient things? After a moment's thought, Lu Jiangxian began to suspect that the one who fought with immortal Lord Chufu might have been an immortal lord from the Green Pine Temple. After all, this so-called heaven-hearing technique resembled divine sense in many ways, so it might indeed be linked to Green Pine Temple. A scholar's borrowing. How could that be called stealing? He mocked himself under his breath, just for amusement, then shifted his position so that the turtle shell disappeared from view. Wang Zun had already begun speaking in a soft voice again. There are records in my family showing that immortal Lord Chufu attained the Tao in ancient times and was a true immortal lord of great power. Later, the immortal lord borrowed a fruition attainment of manifest earth from among the 5 earths, first borrowing then seeking, and drew out the 6th earth, azure manifestation, from emptiness. His merit was boundless, and my family's true monarch has always offered incense to honor him. The middle-aged Taoist sighed and nodded. Our predecessor was immeasurably powerful and meritorious. We juniors are ashamed by comparison. Wang Zun merely looked up at the jade rack and muttered, Elder Dianxing, since you say that the immortal lord is immortal and can avoid all 3 disasters and 9 tribulations, perhaps he still exists in the world. This immortal realm truly is daring. Even if he has already become one with the Tao, the great void surely remembers him. His words made Dianxing even more embarrassed, and he could only sigh, who wouldn't agree? Otherwise, how could our Pinglai end up in such a state, without sun or moon? It was true that Pinglai had neither sun nor moon, but Wang Zun had seen many such grotto heavens before and hadn't thought much of it at first. He nodded, and Dianxing continued, this still depends on the turtle shell the immortal lord himself placed on the main peak. No one has ever dared move it, I reckon. If someone were to take it into the manifest world, it might cause the sun and moon to shine together and give birth to the light of duality in the great void, and that might just pierce the heavens again. After their small talk ended, Wang Zun finally said, I came this time with one more matter that I hope you can assist with, Elder. He spoke softly. My father acquired a dose of 6 Xin unified metal and promised to protect the Jiang family. The Wang family has always honored its word. Our true monarch hopes the Jiang descendants can sever their worldly ties and find a safe haven, so we won't have to keep watching over them, nor fear unexpected events. But now it seems the branch of the Jiang family that led the Yu family to ruin has itself been exterminated. Just as the Jiang family once split the Yu family, so too have they been split. The other involved families have become mortals, while the Loyalan family has returned to its former standing. Justice is served. Jiang Heqian may now be freed. Naturally, Wang Zun could not bow, so he simply cupped his hands in salute. I ask that the immortal realm prepare a secluded place for him to dwell in peace. Dianxing fell into thought. Meanwhile, Lu Jiangxian had already risen and was descending the stone steps, thinking to himself. Dianxing mentioned a stone wall in the sea with immortal arts engraved on it. It's likely similar to the immortal wall in Green Pine Temple. But I don't know which of the 4 seas this is in, or if it even still exists. Once the Li family attains Purple Mansion realm, perhaps we can go searching. Lu Jiangxian could now traverse the great void and search the seas, but the eastern sea was vast beyond compare. Moreover, Lu Jiangxian had never revealed his true form in the manifest world, so the effort would be considerable. The Li family was at a critical juncture, and he couldn't afford to look away. If Li Ziming failed his breakthrough, Lu Jiangxian would have to search on his own. He walked across the sea and returned to Taoist Master Pu Yu's temple. The young man was drawing dark gray water from a well and pouring it into a large cauldron, tapping the cauldron's side with one hand while calculating with his fingers. The jade box lay at the bottom of the cauldron, radiating silver light beneath the rippling water. Its glow echoed the prismatic hues of Pinglai's secret techniques. Lu Jiangxian watched from the side, silently committing everything to memory. Profound Peak Gate. The main peak of Profound Peak Gate, Yuexi Peak, was shrouded in mist. Though not tall at first, the mountain had grown taller year by year, and now towered above the surrounding ranges like a crane among chickens. Jade and stone littered the ground in the cave dwelling at the summit. Taoist Master Changxi sat cross-legged in the central seat, holding a small piece of jade in hand, eyes shut as though in cultivation. After half an hour, the Taoist opened his eyes with a trace of helplessness. With a wave of his hand, the cave doors rumbled open, and the woman in embroidered robes who had been waiting outside stepped in and bowed respectfully. Ting Yun greets ancestor. Though she had waited outside for a long time before being admitted, she still knelt respectfully. It was Taoist Master Changxi who now showed a hint of helplessness and spoke softly, "Tingyun, what brings you here?" Kong Tingyun replied respectfully, "I received word from Bai Yuzhuang that Wang Fu possessed an ancient purple mansion realm spirit item, which has now fallen into the hands of the Hengzhu Dao Gate. The Li family returned empty-handed. This left me puzzled, so I came to seek your audience." Taoist Master Changxi remained silent, understanding Kong Tingyun's true intent, but he was unsure how to respond. The embroidered-robed woman gently continued, "Long ago, ancestor, you placed pieces within the Li family and instructed me to become acquainted with Li Yunjiao. Back then I was ignorant and immature, but fortunately did not spoil the greater plan. As our ties grew deeper, I believed the two families could rely on each other, but the information we provided regarding the radiant sky stone was flawed. King Hung believed it to be the reward promised by our profound peak gate after Azure Ponsek's flood, yet our gate turned around and exploited it again. I felt it would be difficult to offer the Li family a proper explanation, so I came to seek your instruction." With utmost respect, she said quietly, "I mean no disrespect, I only fear disrupting your grand design." Taoist Master Changxi gave a light cough and finally spoke, his voice aged and weary. "I know your words have always been pleasant. There were many players involved in Wang Fu's case. No one expected Tu Longjian to act as he did, which pushed the situation this far." Seeing Kong Tingyun still kneeling with head bowed, his tone shifted slightly, and he said hoarsely, "The Li family must be given an explanation. I won't sacrifice your rapport or dignity just to benefit Profound Peak Gate." Kong Tingyun quickly responded in alarm, "Ancestor, you speak too heavily." Taoist Master Changxi shook his head and waved a hand. "That island in the lake she dwells on seems to be missing a formation. Choose a day to visit and invite those veteran formation masters from Spleetered Island to craft one for her. Would that do?" Kong Tingyun respectfully answered, "Formations are far too sensitive a matter. I fear it's not the right gesture for mending relations." Taoist Master Changxi frowned and said, "The Li family is indeed cautious. Just go visit them and explain the matter. I have a bright yang spell here, once acquired by our Kong family from Su State. Giving it to them would suffice for now. As for what comes next, we'll see then." The woman in embroidered robes bowed low to the floor and softly said, "Tingyun obeys." Taoist Master Changxi sighed lightly and instructed, "You've worked hard to gain this opportunity in the grotto heaven. Don't exhaust yourself any further. Wrap these matters up quickly. I'm getting old. If you enter closed-door cultivation soon, I can still watch over things for a while and offer some stability." Chapter 935, Orchid Eye. Several months later, at Moongaze Lake, formation lights shimmered across the lake aisles, reflected in the serene azure waters. Above the main continent, cultivators came and went. Streaks of light chased each other as they descended around the lake. An air of prosperity and bustle filled the scene. A cloud veiled in white spiritual gauze silently drifted in from the east. As Chen Xunyu came to a stop above the lake, Li Qinghang stepped forward and immediately expressed her thanks. "Thank you for all the trouble along the way, senior." "It's nothing." Chen Xunyu nodded, hand resting on his sword. The blue sash on his pleated robes fluttered in the wind, giving him an elegant air as he spoke lightly. "I merely circled Xifeng Island a few more times. It took little effort, and it's hardly worth calling trouble." He seemed somewhat distracted, clasping his hands as he said, "I still need to make a trip to the Great Western Plains, so I won't impose further." Li Qinghang studied his expression carefully and replied gently, "This junior understands. If you will be staying long in the west and not in Tongmo Prefecture, I'll send Zijin to visit you there instead." Her words responded to an earlier invitation from Chen Xunyu, spoken with good reason. Yet Li Qinghang noticed his gaze shift slightly before he nodded and replied, "Very well." He swept his blue and white patterned sleeves, performed a parting salute, and rode his cloud westward. Li Qinghang silently watched him leave, her almond eyes lowering. Throughout the journey, Li Ximing kept both hands tucked into his sleeves, seemingly feeling chilled. As he and Li Qinghang passed over Xifeng Island with Chen Xunyu, they saw no sign of Li Zijun, but that didn't mean they returned empty-handed. Remnants of merging fire still blazed fiercely above Xifeng Island, with gray-red clouds churning in the sky. It was clearly an ominous sign. At the time, Chen Xunyu had glanced twice, then said to the aunt and nephew, "I fear a merging fire cultivator has fallen." Upon hearing those words, Li Ximing's heart sank halfway to ice. As they traveled, he flew 50 kilometers with the wind, 3 times hesitating and looking back, finally asking, "Do either of you elders feel a chill in this place?" Li Qinghang remained silent the entire time, offering no reply. Li Ziming felt nothing but a bitter northern wind in the area. Li Qinghang had to call him twice before he came to his senses and followed along, floating all the way back to the island. There, dressed in crimson-black robes, Li Qinglio stepped forward and greeted them respectfully, greetings to both elders. Li Qinghang stepped into the hall, flipping her hand to store away her long spear. Li Ziming quietly followed and sat down to the side. Li Qinglio then recounted the matter regarding the visitors from Azure Pond sect. Li Yuanqin and the others had returned the bow and waited aboard the Dawn Cloudliner under the heavenly glow for some time, but never disembarked again. The remaining visitors, including Ning Hemian, had roamed the island for a few days before bidding farewell on their behalf. The Cloudliner had then departed. Li Qinghang gave a faint sigh and said, "You handled this matter well. There was little else to be done. Returning the bow will surely spark some debate, but it has nothing to do with our family. Just observe and leave it be. And what of Azure Pond?" Li Qinglio promptly replied, "There's unrest in both the southern and eastern seas. It seems the Lingu family is backing the Xi family, and they're coming on strong. A few days ago, there was discussion to send Uncle Zijai to the Eastern Sea." Li Qinghang nodded. Since Li Zijai hadn't come to inquire at home, it likely meant the Li family didn't need to interfere. As for Li Qinglio, not seeing Li Zijin return left him faintly puzzled, but noticing the poor mood of the two before him, he dared not probe and only said softly, "In recent months, a fire sparrow has been circling above the lake, appearing and disappearing, seemingly searching for something. It moves with great speed, and we haven't been able to catch it. Has it harmed anyone?" Li Qinghang asked, and seeing Li Qinglio shake his head and gesture that the matter could wait, she dismissed him. Li Ziming immediately grew restless, excused himself, and sped off toward Mount Qingdu. Li Qinghang waited in the hall for several seconds before Li Ziming rushed back, descending on radiant light and exhaling in relief. "Aunt Zijin's life jade is intact, only slightly dimmed." Seeing his spirits lift, Li Qinghang couldn't bear to say more and only nodded lightly, thinking to herself, if someone at the Purple Mansion realm interfered, then of course it wouldn't shatter. Against such divine powers, these simple tricks are barely worth mentioning. Li Ziming clearly understood this as well, but seeing that Li Qinghang showed no joy, he simply sat beside her. The Yang Li Red Sparrow banner flipped back and forth in his sleeve. He took it out and began silently refining it. After 15 minutes, Li Qinghang suddenly looked up and saw a hazy red light rising into the sky. She scrutinized it for a second, then drew her spear, saying, "I fear it's a molten fire demonic creature." The aunt and nephew rode the wind beyond the formation, and sure enough, standing outside was a fire sparrow as tall as a person. Its eyes gleamed with spirit as it examined the two. Its body was wreathed in hazy flames, each feather distinct, yet its aura was murky and its strength unreadable. Unlike ordinary sparrows, its neck was longer and more graceful, while its wings were slightly larger. Its eyes glowed gold red, and the hazy firelight it gave off made the two feel a searing pain on their faces, unclear of its origins yet sensing no hostility. Li Qinghang cupped her hands and said, "May I ask, fellow Taoist?" Flames before the fire sparrow condensed into two ancient seal script words, "Slaughter Jun." It then spoke in human tongue, its voice high and sharp. "I come bearing the directive of Taoist Master Junjian. Please receive the decree within the formation. Taoist Master Junjian." The two were stunned for a moment. Though they didn't know what command Tu Longjian had issued, they dared not show any disrespect. Li Qinghang recognized the flame as indeed from the molten fire Dao, but they had never before received a directive from him and couldn't tell if the fire sparrow was real or fake. The grand formation on the island behind Li Qinghang was only at the Qi cultivation. It was meaningless as a defense against Foundation establishment realm cultivators like them. She wasn't worried about anyone intruding, and the fire sparrow seemed proper enough, so she suppressed her unease and spoke softly, "Please, very well." Her gesture of trust softened the fire sparrow's tone. It stopped in front of the island's main hall, flapped its wings to stop the pair from inviting it inside, and opened its beak to spit something out. Thump. Li Ziming's face flickered with the glow of molten fire, its light casting shifting shadows across his cheeks. He heard a heavy plop as something landed before him, a pitch-black jade box that rolled once, and he instantly snatched it up. His spiritual sense surged into it instantly, and he saw a thumb-sized white stone, radiating brilliant radiant light like mist and smoke. Within the whiteness ran intricate, luminous patterns. Daylight churned within the box like a swirl of bright white sunfire. Just brushing it with his spiritual sense caused his immortal foundation to tremble. Radiant sky stone, the thing he had dreamed of day and night, was finally in his hands. Li Ziming's pupils widened and his face lit with joy as he looked up, only to see another dark shape spew forth from the fire sparrow's beak. It landed with a thud in front of him. It was a corpse, rigid and still as it lay face down. Chapter 936, Orchid II. The young man's gaze fell on the corpse's snow-white longsword. Li Ziming's brows twitched violently, furrowing downward while his brow rose upward. He craned his neck back, his face blank with confusion. He stood frozen, clutching the black jade box, then slowly bent down to grab the corpse's collar and turned it over, studying the face. The man's face was charred black almost to the bone, yet the remaining details of his cheeks and frame matched. In his heart, Li Ziming thought, this must be Zijin. He picked him up and noticed 2 slashes on Li Zijin's neck. Clearly, he had been decapitated more than once. Squinting, he heard the fire sparrow chirping rapidly, so he killed Gu Hongyao and Gu Hongkang to seize the spirit item, was then spotted by Gu Hongjian. Fled heavily wounded and collapsed on a small island, was found by 2 rogue cultivators and beheaded, but he killed them right before dying. Li Ziming listened in a daze, his heart seething with hatred but with no one to direct it toward. Thoughts churned within him until he realized. He hated himself most of all. He vaguely heard his aunt Li Qinghong choke out a thank you, and the fire sparrow opened its beak again, its voice resonating. The radiant sky stone is delivered. Our matters are now settled. The flames before him surged upward as the bird transformed into a streak of radiant fire and soared into the sky. Li Ziming remained numb and unaware. The corpse in his arms had only been held together by spellcraft. Now that the spell had faded, a burst of cold swept forth. The chill raced from his neck to his face, and suddenly his arms felt empty. The solid weight vanished. Clink, clatter, red stones spilled to the ground. He reached out to grab them, but they had already tumbled down his robes and struck the floor. Looking down, he saw a full set of heart, lungs, spleen, and liver that were each crimson red, stone-like in texture, smooth and glistening, lying on the stone tiles. A scent of pine wafted through the air as heavy snow began to fall all around. The snow drifted down from the heavens, carrying waves of pine fragrance, settling softly upon his robes. Snow piled upon Li Ziming's shoulders as rustling sounds filled his ears. He thought, of course. When he was on the brink of death, he took Earthview Bloodstone to stay alive. Li Ziming stared at the bloodstone in the snow, struggling to reconcile the scattered red rocks with his dashing, elegant younger brother. Then he heard Li Qinghong's voice beside him. Minger, gather his things. She took out a jade box and carefully picked up the organs one by one, placing them inside with crisp clinking sounds. Then she scooped 2 handfuls of pine-scented snow and gently sprinkled it over them, speaking softly, I'll take care of this, just gather the rest. Only then did Li Ziming come to his senses. He gathered the remaining items and clutched them to his chest, soaring off the island atop radiant light. Glancing back, he saw snow blanketing the entire island. A cold wind rose from the forest, circled the sky 3 times as if reluctant to part, then drifted steadily eastward. Li Ziming returned the items to his cave dwelling, then hurried back out, riding the wind to hover above the lake. He watched the snowfall until the sky began to brighten, then slowly made his way back inside. Several items sat quietly on his desk. The most striking was the glinting Hanlin, but next to it lay the now-revealed ancient Dharma artifact, the Chongming Profound Insight Screen. A pitch-black jade box rested on one side, while the Dharma robes from Crimson Reef Island were piled to the other. Li Ziming picked up the snow-white longsword and turned it over in his hands a few times before setting it aside. Then he reached for the storage pouch. Li Zijin's storage pouch was plain white. Li Ziming, who also knew the Li family's secret techniques, easily broke the simple restriction Li Zijin had left in place. His spiritual sense swept through it and found it nearly empty. There were only just a few neatly arranged spirit stones, some talismans, pills, and a handful of precious golden talismans of the shamanic Tao, with one already used. Aside from those, there was only a single, small jade box and nothing else. Is this the storage pouch of a Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator? He must have planned for this all along, and been willing to trade his life for that item. That's why he left everything else behind. It felt like he'd been slapped across the face. The haze on his expression vanished, replaced by a grief so raw it surged to the surface. His eyes shut tight as his jaw clenched. It was a long while before he could collect himself. He coughed up 2 mouthfuls of blood that never touched the ground. They turned into radiant light midair and dissipated. Li Ziming rested by the desk until the sun rose high. At last, he wiped his mouth and took out the sole jade box from the storage pouch. It was no bigger than a palm, ordinary in texture, and cold to the touch. He had thought it might be a treasure plundered from Crimson Reef Island, but upon closer inspection, he realized the jade box was of Li family make. It was a standard issue for their direct descendants, used to store Dharma artifacts. Thinking it over, Li Ziming couldn't recall anything that Li Zijin would need to take out instead of leaving at home. He murmured, could it be, that he left something inside? Li Ziming placed the box on the table, set both hands on the edges, and gave a gentle tap. The lid popped open by itself. He glanced inside, his pupils dilated suddenly, and he cried out, "You!" His hands trembling, he slowly lifted the lid entirely. Inside, resting on white silk, lay a pale blue lapis lantern orchid. It was a sight that was all too familiar, yet no matter how many times Li Ziming imagined the possibilities, this flower should never have appeared here. This Dharma artifact was an exquisitely crafted woman's accessory. Each stamen glistened under sunlight, and every petal unfurled in graceful beauty. It was like a venomous scorpion, stinging him full force in the face. Li Ziming leaped to his feet, covering his eyes, shaking his head again and again like a drunken man as he stumbled backward 3 or 4 steps before collapsing onto the ground. Crash! The jade tables and stools clattered to the floor. The lapis orchid, like a vengeful ghost, fell from the desk and rolled a couple times before coming to a stop right before him. Basking in the warm sunlight, the orchid still held the elegant charm of youth. It lay quietly on the floor, its petals glowing with golden hues and its shadow casting a blooming silhouette. Li Ziming squinted at it as his breathing grew hoarse. Memories flooded back, those strange little moments, Zijin's frequent downcast eyes, and a bitter voice echoed in his ears. You make your mess and I'm the one who has to clean it up. No wonder, you didn't let her go, of course. A cautious man like you, how could you have let her go? Zijin, you. He slowly raised his head and let out a sound that was part wail, part sob. You killed her. Chapter 937, Shifting Political Climate. Mount Qingdu. Cold rain fell steadily. The newly budding lotuses by the lakeshore were hit by frost, drooping feebly and plunging into the water to turn mudded and gray. Li Qinghang cradled a jade box as she ascended Mount Qingdu. She noticed the stone steps had grown increasingly mossy, but a clean path remained because Li Xuanxuan came here every few days. After walking a dozen steps, she saw rows of green stone steels standing tall. Li Ziming was still nowhere in sight. She knew he wouldn't be able to come for a while. Only Li Xuanxuan was there, dressed in a gray-blue robe with his sleeves rolled up, holding a steel as he squinted and carved. When he saw Li Qinghang approaching, the old man asked, "Have the arrangements at the foot of the mountain been settled?" "Yes." "Zijin never married or had children, so there are no troublesome matters," replied Li Qinghang. Li Xuanxuan blew the stone dust from his hand. The woman stood beside him and softly said, perhaps he felt guilty and forbade himself from taking a wife. The old man turned the steel and set down the stone chisel in his hand, replying, "I'm getting on in years, so let me speak a little more. Qinghang, hear me out." He sighed and continued, "Among the 4 Zais, Zijin was closest to me, and also the most ruthless. Killing the Meng family was something he could do. He didn't care if he bore guilt, or if he was harshly judged. He was willing to eliminate even himself for anything that hindered Ziming from attaining divine power. If he hadn't been born into our family, he surely would have become a cunning and unpredictable figure of the devil Dao." Li Xuanxuan propped the steel upright and said hoarsely, "Yuanping told me long ago that Zicheng and Zijin were selfless and heartless to the point of making people uneasy." It was true after all. Li Qinghang carefully set down the jade box and spoke softly, "Uncle, I'm not as skilled in strategy as my elder brother. This matter with Wang Fu ended up being someone else's scheme." Li Xuanxuan waved his hand and replied in a hoarse voice, "You did your best. No need to blame yourself." Li Qinghang stood silently for a moment, then descended the stone steps. She saw several of Li Zicheng's children coming up the mountain to pay respects to their second uncle. They respectfully addressed her as "my lady" when they saw her. Li Qinghang hurried past them, rode a bolt of lightning across the sky, and paused on the island. Once she was inside the main hall on the island, seeing that there was still no sign of Li Ziming, she let out a deep sigh. But Li Qingliao, who had been waiting for quite some time, stepped forward and said softly, "My lady, a letter has arrived from Zongquan Island." As he handed her the letter, he spoke concisely, "There is news about Chenghui. A few days ago, he took the pills sent from home and broke through to the 9th stage of the Qi cultivation realm. He said that he suddenly felt the urge to break through in the outer sea, where water descends and thunder rises, upon reaching the 9th stage, so he went into seclusion." Li Qinghang's brows furrowed slightly as she said, "This child made the decision on his own. The Azure Pawn Sect's reward hasn't even been delivered yet. We could have still exchanged for a few essence-gathering pills. Why wouldn't he say anything and just enter seclusion like that?" Li Qinghong knew that spiritual energy could surge at times, and the opportunity for breakthrough could also arise suddenly. Yet she had spent many years on the island and knew that child well, so she still thought to herself, he probably feels he hasn't contributed much to the family, while most of his siblings died in battle, so he can't bring himself to speak up. Second is Master Monk Qingheng. He's inquiring about Uncle Zijun. Li Zijun was Li Qingliao's second uncle, so he was dressed in mourning garb. His eyes carried sorrow as he said softly, "Several months ago, the master monk suddenly swore to renounce attainment and coughed up 3 pints of blood. After much reflection, he believed it had something to do with Zijun, but didn't dare leave rashly, so he hurriedly finished writing this letter to inquire." Li Qingheng unfolded the letter and saw that Qingheng had written, "I once swore an oath to Zijun, owing him a debt I would repay even at the cost of my life. I believe such vows should not be made lightly. I fear Zijun is in trouble. That's what caused me to cough blood. I beg your excellency to investigate with caution." Li Qingheng silently put the letter away. She hadn't involved Qingheng in the matter with Wang Fu, feeling like it was dishonorable to begin with. Even though Cheng Xiaogate opposed their family, she didn't consider it a matter of righteousness. The Li family had never claimed to be overly virtuous. In today's world, all they could do was treat the people well and avoid blood food. As for seizing spirit items from enemies, that they could do, but Qingheng could not. He practiced the ancient Buddhist Tao, which emphasized a pure heart. Asking him to do such things, even if he agreed, could easily lead him off the right path. Qingheng had labored tirelessly, repaying the favor of achieving a breakthrough into Master Monk. He had served the family diligently for decades, and naturally Li Qingheng did not want him caught up in such matters. She held the letter, uncertain how to respond, for a while before putting it away quietly with her lips tightly pressed. Then she saw Li Chenghui rushing over on the wind. Li Chenghui had now reached the 7th stage of the Qi cultivation realm. By rights, he could attempt to break through to the foundation establishment realm with some pills, but he didn't feel confident and kept delaying. After all, he was still far from 60 and planned to wait for the right pills. He said quietly, "My lady, a cultivator has come to the island. He's from the Northern Sea, practices thunder arts, wears a long sword at the waist, and is dressed in silver feather thunder robes. His aura is quite fearsome. He calls himself Zai Ziking of the Northern Sea, Eastern Sea. Spleetered Island lay north of the Crimson Reef Island Sea region. Vast and expansive, its fire vein was especially vigorous. The Azure Pond Sec's immortal peak stood at the island's center and had once been guarded by Ningguan. Thus, it was filled with pine and bamboo, and the forest breezes were tranquil and serene. Si Tongyi, clad in a red feathered robe that shimmered with iridescent light, flew through the sky like a flaming phoenix and gently landed atop the peak. After a brief moment, a burst of rainbow light shot out from the summit and landed before him, transforming into a dignified man. The man had a youthful appearance and his face was like sculpted jade. His features were gentle yet grand, not overly soft. His eyes, however, brimmed with authority. He cast out 2 sleeves of heavenly glow with a flick and came to a steady halt. "Greetings, Peak Master." Si Tongyi noticed how the rainbow mist came and went without a trace. He was inwardly startled, thinking, Li Zijai's cultivation has advanced again. Even my perception techniques can't see through that escape light. The rainbow mist lies between water, fire, and yang, and with the fruition attainment of Luoxia manifesting in this era, he's truly formidable now. Li Zijai nodded gently. Now that he was overseeing the Eastern Sea and had grown stronger, his age and stature lent him natural authority. All the cups and bowls on the table floated up with a light lift of his hand, and the tea in the jade pot began to boil on its own. This technique used no visible mana, only a strand of rainbow light, displaying his masterful control of spell arts. Si Tongyi's guess was correct. Li Zijai's strength had once again increased. On one hand, he'd received rewards and taken treasured panaceas and pills, further perfecting his cultivation. On the other, it was due to his talisman Qi, Rainbow Pierce Skyway. This talisman Qi had shown its might several times in pursuit and evasion as it dissolved others' mana. More importantly, it could be continuously nurtured to preserve one's life and enhance their spell arts. In his early years, Li Zijai had focused on studying spells and hadn't explored it deeply. But now, with his cultivation at its peak and the nurturing of his immortal foundation, its effects became more pronounced. Chapter 938, Shifting Political Climate II. Each time he nourished his immortal foundation with talisman Qi, the power of his spells would increase. Whether it was his escape spell, footwork technique, perception technique, or spell arts, they all advanced together. He was far more effective than other cultivators, who painstakingly honed each skill individually or took targeted spirit herbs. His already strong escape spell and footwork techniques became more refined, while even his weaker offensive and defensive arts were now becoming presentable. Moreover, this talisman is said to be the icing on the cake. The more balanced and complete one's aura, the higher their position and the firmer their command, the more powerful the talisman chi becomes. At first, he thought the talisman chi's boost was minimal. He thought that there would only be small progress after much nurturing. But now that he was overseeing the Eastern Sea, the golden light of the talisman chi in his body had grown dozens of times brighter. Gradually, he grasped its wonders, and his strength rose steadily. Si Tongyi, seated beside him, became even more respectful and said softly, "This time I came to see you, Peak Master, regarding sect matters." "Go on." Li Zijai gave a slight nod. Though he was newly promoted to a high position, his conduct and demeanor were unlike someone who had been cloistered within the sect for years. Si Tongyi, familiar with him, spoke frankly. 3 days ago, Taoist Master Buzi appeared in the Eastern Sea and fought with the Taoist Master of Crimson Reef Island. Rumor has it that even the reclusive, that is, Taoist Master Tanyun, revealed himself. We can now confirm the great demonic beast has indeed broken through. Crimson Reef Island now has at least 2 Taoist masters. Though he spoke in the name of the Azure Pond sect, the worry in his eyes was clearly directed toward Kai Buzi, as he said softly, "According to many, for Taoist Master Buzi to cause even Taoist Master Tianwen to suffer losses, it would mean that he must have reached the late stage of the Purple Mansion realm." After saying this, he silently observed Li Zijai. The man did pause for a moment, then relaxed his brows and sighed. He truly lives up to being the Kai family's prized prodigy of the past, to have such cultivation speed. "Yes," Si Tongyi replied softly and lowered his head. Li Zijai asked in concern, "Has the elder given any instructions, or is there a plan?" Si Tongyi hesitated. "Our Taoist master has not appeared in a long time, and the family elder has been quite tolerant of the Kai family. Some have grown increasingly emboldened." When they heard of Taoist Master Buzi's appearance, the main hall atop Azure Pond Peak was filled with cheers. Li Zijai smiled and said, "Celebrating who?" "Of course, celebrating the sect master." Si Tongyi gave a knowing nod and answered, "Elder Ning Hijing was also overjoyed." As for Taoist Fubo, there's been no news. The current sect master Kaizuk Seo was from the Kai family's proper first lineage main branch. Leaving aside the secluded Kai Jian, Kai Buzi's emergence now added immense authority to his standing. Meanwhile, Ning Hijing was overjoyed beyond measure. Kai Fubo had better start worrying, thought Li Zijai. Li Zijai poured himself some tea and asked, "How does the elder intend to respond?" Si Tongyi replied softly. The family elder released Xia Yun and brushed aside the matter of Ning Heed. He turned away all the complaining disciples and no longer received any visitors. Xia Yun and Ning Heed were under Ning Hijing. Though both were capable, they lacked moral integrity. One diluted quality while managing Ziki Peak, and the other embezzled from the immortal tribute office. How could they outmaneuver Si Yuanli? So one had been imprisoned and the other interrogated. The offensive had originally been aimed at Ning Hijing's Yuanxing Peak, implying he was unfit for his post. Now, all their efforts had gone to waste, and Si Yuanli had shut himself away in silence. With the Kai family backed by a Purple Mansion realm cultivator, it seemed they had stabilized the situation. Li Zijai, however, was not surprised and nodded. The elder has played a fine move, but the act must be carried through completely. Next, we must give up either the Eastern Sea or Southern Sea. Yes, Si Tongyi nodded but still looked concerned as he answered, but the elder still worries about Taoist Master Buzi. There's widespread panic within the sect. Most of them remain neutral, and even many Taoists close to our family have defected to the main peak. No matter, Li Zijai said softly, this will only make Ning Hijing more confident. With a Taoist master above him, he wouldn't dare move against the elder no matter how emboldened he feels. But he's headstrong and stubborn. He won't be able to tolerate Kai Fubo and others still holding most of the power. Kai Fubo has likely abandoned his scheming and will back off. But the Kai family behind him are no better than Ning Hijing. They won't easily give up what's already in their grasp. No matter what, they're still Kai blood, and if pushed, they'll bare their fangs all the same. Si Tongyi gave a slight nod and said, the elder thinks the same. He's already planted agents within. I'm afraid you may need to endure some grievances later, Taoist. Li Zijai understood all too well that the Lingu family of the Southern Sea had deep roots. No matter how stubborn Ning Hijing was, he wouldn't be foolish enough to provoke the Lingu family. Most likely, the burden would fall on him instead. He smiled and nodded. After a few more polite exchanges, Si Tongyi rode the wind and departed. Li Zijai sat quietly on the peak for a while, his expression gradually calming. As his mana circulated, he flew down the mountain with the help of the Grand Formation, landing beside the guards and saying, "Let her come." A few moments later, a graceful and airy woman arrived, her face bearing a hint of amusement. She wore a pale jade Taoist robe and was striking in appearance. She was none other than Lingu Lanying of the Lingu family. She took her seat again and said softly, "You arrived just in time. Lord Si certainly holds you in high regard, Zijai." Li Zijai, stationed in the Eastern Sea, had actually known about Kai Buzi's matter even before the rest of the sect, let alone Lingu Lanying sitting before him. She let out a soft laugh and said, "So Taoist Master Yuanziu truly won't show himself." Taoist Master Yuanziu had yet to make an appearance. The two had previously suspected he might have been injured in a grotto heaven, but seeing how composed and decisive Si Yuanli was at the moment, it was clear Yuanziu was simply refusing to show himself. Taoist Master Buzi is truly still alive. It seems he has no lingering attachment to the Azure Pond sect, said Li Zijai. Lingu Lanying nodded, and both of them understood the matter clearly in their hearts. Though Yuanziu was confident Kai Buzi wouldn't meddle in the Azure Pond sect's affairs, he still couldn't predict the old man's true thoughts, so he secluded himself and feigned death, leaving all matters to Si Yuanli. If Buzi did return or had a change of heart, the old master only had to step in and say it was all done without his knowledge, and everything would blow over. As long as Yuanziu didn't personally act to replace the sect master, it would never escalate to the point of disgracing both Purple Mansion realm cultivators. Si Yuanli was a direct descendant of a Purple Mansion realm cultivator. Even if something went wrong, Yuanziu could protect him. But as for the rest of them, we are mere political tools. If things really take a turn, we'll be sacrificed to pacify the Elder's fury and preserve the Purple Mansion realm cultivator's face. Lingu Lanying didn't say it aloud, but she was clearly calculating. She merely said softly, "Now that Buzi has acted in the Eastern Sea, on the surface it seems like he's offering the Kai family a remedy, but looking from another angle. Doesn't it also prove he's been wandering the Eastern Sea all along, without the slightest interest in what happened to the Azure Pond sect?" Li Zijai nodded and replied gently, "Purple Mansion realm cultivators never act without calculation. All we need to do is observe the power struggle within the sect." Lingu Lanying chuckled and shook her head in reply, "Do we even need to think about it? Kaijian can see clearly that Ning Hijing is domineering by nature. He's suited for enforcing law, but if he is made sect leader, he'll drive out everyone who doesn't align with him. How could he possibly outmaneuver Kai Fubo?" She swallowed the name Li Yuanqin without letting it pass her lips. But then she noticed the young man in front of her sip his tea and speak softly, "Let's offer help at the right time. After all, easing the sect master's burden is our duty." Chapter 939, Owing Nothing I. Li Qinghong waited in the hall for a while before Li Chenghuai arrived with a youth. The young man wore a silver feather thunder robe whose collar was embroidered with purple patterns. A sword hung at his waist, and his eyes shone with piercing light. He spotted Li Qinghong the moment he entered and clasped his hands in a formal salute. His voice was clear and his speech was crisp and decisive as he said aloud, "Zai Ziking, a thunder cultivator from the Northern Sea, greets you, fellow Taoist." Li Qinghong nodded slightly and replied softly, "I am Li Qinghong. Well met, fellow Taoist. I have long heard of your great name." Zai Ziking had his black hair tied back, with a faint purple mark on his fair forehead. He appeared youthful and gave off a bright aura. His age was unclear, but his gaze was pure as he spoke gently. "I reside in the Northern Sea and have heard of the Zhaoyu conflict. As I journeyed south, I wished to first pay a visit to your esteemed family." Li Qinghong didn't know his background, but the youth was courteous, and as a thunder cultivator, he naturally didn't give off any ill feelings. She nodded and said, "Our household has encountered some upheaval. I apologize if the reception is lacking." After a brief exchange of pleasantries, Zai Ziking considered his words before speaking in a steady voice. "My family has long resided in the Northern Sea and have been cultivating the profound Thunder Dao for over 800 years. We have some foundation but lack in celestial thunder arts. One of my purposes for this visit is to exchange for such arts with your esteemed family." He had chosen a mild topic to open the discussion. Li Qinghong took a small sip of tea, feeling her thoughts settle. The Li family had two celestial thunder arts, both derived from the profound thunderpool. One was the third-grade Purple Thunder secret origin technique. The other was an ancient method, the Cloud Thunder inquiry technique. Both started from third grade, neither reaching fifth grade. Li Qinghong had also cultivated them. There's nothing that can't be offered in exchange, thought Li Qinghong. Simply put, the Purple Thunder secret origin technique wasn't considered powerful by the current standards of the Li family. While it was strong for a third-grade technique, it shortened one's lifespan and cut off descendants. What truly held value were the three profound thunders, the Purple Talisman Origin Light secret technique. Moreover, could someone travel thousands of kilometers just for one technique? My art stemmed from the Tao of thunder steering and cloud dwelling, so it's not hard to guess. He's probably here for the grotto heaven and is merely sounding things out. Li Qinghong had always felt a faint gloom surrounding the thundercloud grotto heaven. So she nodded courteously and replied, "Very well. Our family is also facing hard times, and your family's thunder arts belong to the righteous Tao. As long as we agree on the price, there's no issue in proceeding." Zai Ziking smiled faintly and said softly, "I'd like to take a look at the opening scroll first." Li Qinghong summoned someone to bring out the jade slip. The Li family had long prepared recorded excerpts for the younger generation to choose from, so there was no need to transcribe anything. Zai Ziking waited a while, and when a crisp chime echoed at the front of the hall, radiant light shimmered as a young cultivator stepped inside. The cultivator wore a white Taoist robe with a gray-golden inner layer. His features were upright and handsome. His eyes were slightly open, and celestial light flowed gently around him. He raised his brow and gave Li Qinghong a formal bow. Someone behind him brought in the jade slip, Li Ziming of the Moongaze Li family. Zai Ziking noticed his slightly hoarse voice, but his tone was calm, so he paid it no mind. He turned over the jade slip in his hand and read it. Surprise flickered across his brows as he said, "Profound Thunderpool. Is this your technique, fellow Taoist?" Li Qinghong's immortal foundation wasn't a secret, so she simply acknowledged it. Zai Ziking hesitated and said, "To be honest, I've also heard of this immortal foundation. It belongs to the Tao of thunder steering and cloud dwelling." He raised his brows and looked at Li Qinghong, speaking gently. "This method is a substitute for Celestial Thunder's winter thunderclap, but it's called Profound Thunderpool. It seeks to reconcile with Profound Heaven, which was typical of the thunder steering and cloud dwelling Tao." Li Qinghong listened attentively and replied thoughtfully, "Your esteemed family has a long heritage. Do you know why this Tao developed in such a way?" "Ah." Zai Ziking's tone carried a hint of bitterness as he replied, "It's not exactly a secret. Everyone from south to north knows the world has 5 virtues, and that there are profound, celestial, and origin thunders. Yet for generations, we thunder cultivators have never understood why there are 5 for water and fire, but only 3 for thunder. Even if that's the way of heaven and earth, profound and celestial governs thunder, and origin thunder is also called prime magnetism. Logically, there should be a 4th thunder governing magnetism to complement the dualities of nature." Seeing Li Qinghong nod thoughtfully, Zai Ziking continued with a sigh, "So many predecessors have tried to prove it, suspecting that a Tao fruit was lost at the beginning of creation. The profound thunderpool is one such attempt. I see." Li Qinghong gradually understood, so it's no coincidence that the 2 profound thunder items, Duriwo and the 6-fold profound thunder punishment tokens, suit me so well. My immortal foundation itself is the result of many rounds of refinement. She went over it once more in her head, then asked, "If this Tao truly exists, then there must be corresponding spirit items and demonic creatures birthed with the same immortal foundation. How could they not appear?" Zai Ziking was momentarily speechless. Clearly, he did not have a solid grasp of such secrets and could only say, "I've only heard some rumors. In ancient times, immortal lords were everywhere. Those with supreme cultivation could transcend fruition attainment, borrowing from and hiding things within heaven and earth, thereby altering the world. Maybe one thunder was hidden away by an immortal lord long ago." His tone was hesitant, clearly uncertain of the truth. Li Qinghong nodded and Zai Ziking added, "My family has an abundance of thunder-related items. If you have any needs, Qinghong, I can try requesting something from home." Li Qinghong paused. At the moment, she couldn't think of any spirit items her family lacked, so she said, "It's better to exchange technique for technique. Your family has a deep foundation. Do you have any bright Yang Dao techniques?" Zai Ziking was slightly surprised. After a moment of thought, he replied, "My family doesn't have one, but we are under the Northern Seas Beihuan sect. I can request a foundation establishment realm technique from the upper sect. If I send a formal letter, there should be options to choose from." "Oh." Li Ziming, who had been listening silently at the side, finally nodded. Li Qinghong's eyes lit up as she thought to herself, "So technique control in the Northern Sea is this relaxed. They can even request techniques from the immortal sect and resell them." She had also heard of the Beihuan sect's reputation and said gently, "Very well. In that case, since our family has some additional items, I hope we can exchange for a few more volumes." Well, Zai Ziking hesitated and said softly, "These things aren't really presentable. The techniques won't be top tier either. Please don't expect too much, King Hong." When he saw that Li Qinghong and her nephew seemed confused, he shook his head awkwardly. It was clearly a private matter, so Li Qinghong refrained from pressing further. Zai Ziking then smiled and said, "Then let's consider that matter settled. There's one more thing. I'd like to ask if I may take a look at the Dharma artifact in your possession." Zai Ziking seemed aware that his request was excessive, and a deep look of apology showed on his face. Li Qinghong, however, didn't seem angry. She immediately understood what he meant and asked, "The six-fold profound thunder punishment tokens." "Exactly." Zai Ziking quickly said, "That item holds great importance to my family. When it was first recovered from the ruins of Thundercloud Temple beneath the sea, one of my ancestors jeweled the Azure Pond sect's Master Busey. Both were in Foundation establishment realm then. He lost by a narrow margin and still regrets it to this day. I hope you might allow me to examine it briefly." Chapter 940, Owing Nothing II. Li Qinghong couldn't quite gauge his true intent. Her priority was to obtain that cultivation technique first, all else could wait. So she replied softly, "You're a newcomer here, and I must admit I still feel some caution. Let's postpone this for now. Once our families have exchanged techniques and understand each other better, we can revisit the matter." Zai Ziking could only sigh softly and nod in agreement. After a few more casual remarks, he prepared to take his leave. Li Qinghong nodded at Li Ziming, signaling him to leave first. Only then did Zai Ziking rise and casually say, "It's a bit of a coincidence. I, too, cultivate the Tao of thunder steering and cloud dwelling. My immortal foundation is called Heaven's Crying Spur. This trip I'm heading south to Lake Xi'an, then turning east toward the Eastern Sea." Li Qinghong sighed inwardly and asked, "What business takes you there?" Zai Ziking shook his head with a smile and said, "You and I both cultivate with borrowed Tao lineages. Surely, you've had your own doubts, so why ask me? The dragonkin devour thunder, and such a prolonged falling water rising storm must mean unfinished business. My sect informed me long ago, so I traveled south voluntarily to spare the dragon monarch the trouble of dragging me down and harming my kin." Li Qinghong escorted him out all the way to the island's edge. She saw thunder bloom beneath Zai Ziking's feet as he turned and said softly, "It's not all bad. There's no need for them to kill us all. There may be benefits to come. When the time comes, I'll seek you out, Qinghong. If we go together, at least we'll have each other's company." Li Qinghong fell silent for a moment, watching him depart. Then she rode thunder back to the peak, where she happened to run into Li Ziming. He said softly, "Aunt, he seems to have an ulterior motive." Li Qinghong had sensed the same. This man had shown no real urgency for the technique, and his request about the artifact seemed more like a pretext. It was perhaps just a way to build rapport. The information he later revealed likely mattered far more. As for his final remarks before leaving, those were probably the real reason he had come. Li Qinghong understood this well and didn't explain further. She only replied softly, "Don't worry. Are you doing better? You need not worry, Aunt." Li Ziming's tone was gentle. He had shaved the beard he used to keep, and his body brimmed with radiant light. Li Qinghong had rarely heard such a tone from him, so she was slightly surprised. The young man cupped his hands and said softly, "Aunt, I'm going into seclusion for cultivation." Li Qinghong responded with a quiet and watched him ascend toward Mount Wu, where the spiritual energy was most abundant along the shoreline. The hall fell silent. The woman sat alone for a moment, then rose and returned to her dwelling, on Pingya Island. Morning light leaped over the distant mountains, spilling golden rays across the lake. Pingya Island was relatively flat, with connected isles, drifting white mist, and rows of pavilions and towers laid out in graceful order. It radiated the atmosphere of an immortal domain. The grand hall at the island's peak gleamed in the morning light. Li Chenghui walked up the stairs one by one and entered. The carved flying beasts at the eaves had faintly red eyes and 4 bared teeth. It was a sign of vigorous fire veins. He calculated with his fingers and thought, "Summer is near, today is an auspicious day. The celestial world generation is to receive teachings and breath arts, a well-chosen date." With both Li Ziming and Li Qinghong in seclusion, time flowed like water. This was the Li family's first formal instruction ceremony since unifying Moongaze Lake. Li Chenghui, master of Qingdu Peak, one of the 2 peaks among the 16 prefectures, had arrived early as expected. Inside the main hall, someone had already arrived and stood with hands clasped behind his back, studying a map intently. He wore a deep red robe with golden embroidery and had discarded the heavy overrobe for summer. He looked clean-cut and decisive. The design had been settled by the two brothers. Li Chenghui naturally recognized this as the garb of the family head, dark red with gold. It symbolized the family's axis. His own robe was outer blue with inner white, the mark of Qingdu's chief, representing the family's formal leadership. The Li family governed 16 prefectures, 2 peaks and 1 mountain. All peak chiefs of the 16 prefectures wore red robes. The 2 peaks had distinct colors where Qingdu, which represented the clan chief, was outer blue and inner white. Jade Court, which represented the enforcers, was pale with gray. It was visually clear at a glance. As for the great mountain of Milan, it was too vast to be entrusted lightly. It remained vacant to this day, and the designated purple robes had yet to be used. Li Chenghui ascended several steps and saluted Li Qinglio, speaking softly. Family head, the celestial world generation, and the younger members of the prominent families from the 16 prefectures have all arrived outside the hall. Most of the Li family's celestial world generation had now stepped onto the Tao of cultivation. The eldest, Li Zhufeng of the first lineage, was 26 and had reached the 6th stage of the embryonic breathing realm. Li Qinglio had met most of them and said plainly, "Let them enter." Most of the radiant lure generation had attained cultivation, but many had died in battle in the north, leaving few heirs. As a result, the celestial world generation was not only small in number, but there were even fewer among them with the innate ability to qualify for the main hall. When Li Qinglio looked over them, he saw fewer than 10. In all great families, it's common to see sparse descendants and mutual adoption. It's true, once one attains cultivation, having children becomes harder, especially after Qi cultivation realm or foundation establishment realm. It wasn't entirely a bad thing. Li Qinglio had long observed that ties across 3 to 5 generations within the family often grew distant. But with adoptions, relations that had drifted apart were drawn close once more. The 4 branches had become notably more united. He pondered quietly. Some great families endure for centuries. Adoption must be a crucial strategy for them. He put his thoughts away as those below bowed. The one in the lead looked no older than 16 and was also at the 6th stage of the embryonic breathing realm. Li Chenghui nodded slightly, a smile forming on his face. This youth was the only descendant of the seasonal branch, his eldest son, Li Zhuluo. Li Zhuluo had gray eyes and long brows, with the poise of a young man. Dressed in black pleated robes, he spoke with confidence. Though Li Chenghui himself was plain in looks, his wife, Madame Ding, was beautiful, and their son had inherited the best of both parents, appearing elegant and refined. Li Chenghui had never been fond of long seclusions, so Li Zhuluo had grown up to be well-mannered and courteous by his side. Watching from the side, his father felt a warm satisfaction. If father saw him, he'd surely be pleased, thought Li Chenghui. Last time his father, Li Zijai, returned home, he hadn't said a word to him. Li Chenghui had long since grown used to it. Now in his 30s, he no longer minded and often forgot about him. Yet thinking of him now, he felt a faint daze. Father. By his count, he had only seen his father a handful of times since childhood. The man rode mists and rainbows and was a prominent figure in the sect. But when Li Chenghui thought of his father, it was mostly confusion. I owe him nothing, and he owes me nothing. That's all there is to it. Standing atop the steps, gazing down at those in the grand hall, Li Chenghui knew exactly where everything he had come from, and he also knew he hadn't lost much. He never harbored resentment, but on rare occasions like this, when they came to mind, he quietly thought, I often forget them. They probably don't often remember me either, and that's just how it is.